Chapter 2440. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He felt that these little fishes were harmless and could even be beneficial to him. However, he did not move and continued to observe the little beast. The little beast was like a fish in the water. It swam happily as if it had returned to its home. Half an hour later, it had eaten more than 10 small silver fishes. Once again, it stepped on the surface of the water and leaped into the air. It leaped directly onto the cliff above the pool. In one leap, it had leaped over 100 meters, which shocked Chu Li. This leap was much more powerful than a martial arts master's light body technique. However, it did not have any inner energy in its body. If it did, it would not be so surprised. Could it be that the strength of the body could reach such a level? He suddenly realized that his body was strong, but he lacked a true understanding of it. He could not unleash the true strength of his body. It was beyond his imagination that the little beast could jump over 100 meters with just its physical strength. His body might be a few times stronger than the little beast, but he could not reach this level. To have a perfect body, not only did he need to activate and strengthen his heart technique, he also needed to thoroughly understand his body. Chu Li realized that his path was a little crooked. If he really wanted to have a perfect body, he could not just rely on inner energy. He had to unleash the true strength of his body to have a chance. Thinking of this, he felt that he had found the right path. After leaving the arcane realm, he had to hide his inner energy and heart technique. He had to rely on his physical strength to fight in the extraterrestrial battlefields. After the little beast leaped onto the cliff, it shrank into a cave and lay down to sleep. It continued to inhale and exhale white mist that shrouded him. It was obvious that the purple fruit's power had not been completely absorbed. It was still strengthening it. Chu Li nodded slowly. Since he knew where its nest was, he could visit it often. He leaped into the pool and waved his heaven's gale palm. Suddenly, a ball of water leaped into the air. There were 2 little silver fishes that wriggled and shot towards him. Chu Li waved his hand. They hung in front of him and wriggled. Then, Chu Li disappeared from the spot and appeared outside the arcane realm. Lu Qingxue was not there. Chu Li threw the 2 silver fishes onto the grass and looked at them. After a while, he shook his head. They did not seem to be rare treasures. This mystic realm was really strange. There were countless exotic flowers and plants, but the animals weren't as amazing. They were all wild beasts, and even if they ate a lot of exotic flowers and plants, they still couldn't evolve into spiritual beasts. Or was there a spirit beast around that he had yet to discover? Are they hiding themselves? He also discovered that there were not many wild beasts on the mountain, far fewer than he had imagined. Logically speaking, such an environment was most conducive for the reproduction of wild beasts. He waited at the side and didn't go in again. He tried to reduce the number of times he went in and out as much as possible. Perhaps there were some restrictions, in case he couldn't go in again. There was no movement in the surroundings. There were no disciples of the Heavenly Wind sect coming in or out, and no one else was near either. It was obvious that no one knew the location of the secret territory or even its existence. Half a day later, Lu Qingxue suddenly appeared with a faint smile on her face. Chu Li saluted and smiled. "Senior Lu, what do you think? It is indeed a spiritual herb." Lu Qingxue beamed with joy and praised. Strengthening one's physique and nurturing one's vitality is truly rare. Chu Li asked, "It can increase my power?" "Yes." Lu Qingxue nodded vigorously. "Just a small piece, and it increased the disciple's inner energy cultivation by 10 years. Not only did it increase his inner energy, but it also strengthened his meridians and physique." Chu Li sighed. "It is indeed a spirit fruit. Are there any side effects?" "Not at the moment." Lu Qingxue said, "You can harvest it first and consume it after a while." Chu Li nodded. Lu Qingxue asked, "Yuan Si, how many do you plan to harvest?" Chu Li smiled. "Of course, the more the better. It's a pity that sect leader Cheng needs to recuperate. If the 2 of them work together, it would be faster." Lu Qingxue gently shook her head. "It's better not to let him know. Otherwise, he'll think about how to take all the benefits for himself." Chu Li smiled and nodded. This was indeed in line with Cheng Yuan's character. He must reap the benefits himself and not leave a way out for others. Lu Qingxue said, Yuan see, we can't take advantage of you. How about this? We'll exchange spirit pills for it. Moreover, we'll only take 1 out of 10. Chu Li waved his hand. Senior Lu, you don't have to be so courteous. Let's split it evenly. There are so many exotic flowers and herbs in the arcane realm. These purple fruits would not make a difference. If they followed this method, they could obtain many more spirit fruits. However, they would need Lu Qingxue's cooperation. If Cheng Yuan found out about this, he would definitely think of a way to divide the fruits. That would be a huge loss. Lu Qingxue frowned. After some thought, she did not object anymore. She would find an opportunity to compensate him in the future. This was indeed an extremely important spirit fruit. After the disciples consumed it, their strength would increase greatly. With the advent of chaos, the more powerful the disciples were, the safer the dancing butterfly sect would be. Chu Li said, I'll go in and harvest it. Lu Qingxue nodded. Be careful. Chu Li smiled and waved his hand. He disappeared in a flash and entered a forest in the arcane realm. The omniscient mirror could already see the purple fruits under the thick leaves. They looked like they were carved from purple jade. Even under the leaves, they did not lose their sturdiness. It was obvious that they could survive for a long time. Chu Li used vines to weave a large net. Everything was done with a heaven gale palm. The gentle wind was as agile as his fingers. In the process, his heaven gale palm had become more proficient. After that, the purple fruits flew out from under the thick leaves and fell into the net. More than 100 of them flew over in one go. It looked like a big pile. Chu Li suddenly disappeared and appeared in front of Lu Qingxue. There were more than 100 purple fruits piled together. He smiled. Senior Lu, let's split them up. I'll go get more. These should be enough, Lu Qingxue said. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Lu Qingxue said, we can't eat too many of them. Besides, we don't know their properties, so they can't be used as medicine. 1 piece per disciple will do. Chu Li smiled. 1 piece per person. If the spiritual energy is too strong, I'm afraid it won't be able to withstand it. Lu Qingxue frowned. Chu Li said, try it first. All right. Lu Qingxue slowly nodded. She had already made more than 10 baskets. She put the purple fruits into them 1 by 1 and divided them into 2 portions. Then, she moved her portion back first. Chu Li entered the arcane realm again and collected a few more bags of purple fruits. He collected half of the entire forest. He did not exterminate all of them. Instead, he only collected 1 out of every 2. It seemed like the number was slightly sparse, but it was not completely gone. In the end, he collected a total of 2,000 purple fruits. 1,000 per person. Chu Li moved all of them to the giant peak where the second sect was located. The peak was huge. White clouds obscured the view below. The sect leader's basilica stood majestically. It did not look like it was secluded at all. Hu Tianlai was guarding the sect leader's basilica. When he saw Chu Li carrying baskets of purple fruits over, he widened his eyes in shock. Chu Li waved his hand. Sect leader, this is... Hu Tianlai carefully examined the purple fruits. He knew that they were not ordinary fruits. Otherwise, the sect leader would not have bothered to bring them over personally. Chu Li smiled. Spirit fruits. They can strengthen inner energy and physique. Try on a few people. Chapter 2441. He ran out, and soon, Sang Qingyun and the others hurried over. Their eyes lit up when they saw the purple fruits piled up in the hall. Sang Qingyun picked one up and bit into it. He did not feel any danger and ate it in one go. He burped in satisfaction and looked comfortable. He sighed, good stuff. It really is a spirit fruit. Chu Li smiled as he watched. He was very satisfied with the hall leader of the Templar Sanctuary's righteousness and compassion. Sang Qingyun was obviously worried about letting other disciples test the effect, so it was better for him to try it himself. At least his cultivation level was high. Even if he was poisoned, he had a higher chance of survival. Chu Li did not expose him. He smiled. How do you feel, hall leader Sang? Sang Qingyun squinted his eyes and sighed. My body is full of energy. My body is getting stronger. Oh, it's so hot. He felt as if he had fallen into magma. His blood began to boil, and he could even smell the burning smell from his hair. His flesh began to crack, and he was about to fall apart. Chu Li shook his head. Sang Qingyun quickly used his inner energy to get rid of the pain. However, the more he tried, the worse the situation became. His blood boiled even more, and he disappeared in a flash. Chu Li and Hu Zongyuan saw Wan Run shaking his head. They followed him and saw him soaking in a cold spring. His body was steaming like boiling water. The spring water around him became much warmer. This is a cold spring. Wan Run shook his head and smiled. It seems that Senior Sang is really hot. Hu Zongyuan said, Senior Sang, are you okay? I won't die. Sang Qingyun shouted. His voice was like a bronze bell, spreading far and wide. Chu Li said, Hall Leader Sang, you ate too much. It seems that the power of one fruit is too strong. I can. Sang Qingyun said. He felt that as the heat surged, he was rapidly becoming stronger. His meridians became wider and more resilient, and his inner energy became more pure and vigorous. It was different from ordinary elixirs, where one's inner energy became deeper but lost its purity. After eating this fruit, not only did his inner energy become deeper, but it also became pure. It was truly an anomaly. The more fruits like this, the better it would be. It could save him a lot of hard work. Chu Li smiled. If you can't take it, don't force yourself. Sect Master, don't worry. Sang Qingyun hurriedly said. The heat around him continued to rise, and it was getting more and more intense. In the end, only a vast expanse of whiteness could be seen above the cold spring, and Sang Qingyun's appearance could not be seen clearly. He did not make a sound, only gritting his teeth and enduring in silence. The longer he endured, the stronger he became. Chu Li could see that he was on the verge of collapsing, but he was holding on with all his might. If someone of Sang Qingyun's strength had to endure like this, the average disciple would probably not be able to. It seemed that he had to take it slowly and not be too aggressive. Rushing for results could very well cost him his life. After some time, Sang Qingyun jumped out of the cold spring with a bang. The entire cold spring had turned into a hot spring, and it was slightly hot to the touch. After Sang Qingyun landed on the ground, he gently shook his clothes and was in high spirits. Wan Rin and the rest focused their senses and sensed that Sang Qingyun was like a completely different person. His aura was surging like a mountain, giving them immense pressure. Sang Qingyun couldn't help but laugh. How about it? What a powerful fruit. Wan Rin sighed. Hu Zongjian looked him up and down a few times before saying with a smile, Senior brother Sang, you didn't eat too much, did you? No problem. Sang Qingyun shook his head proudly and looked at Chu Li with a face full of smiles. Sect leader, it's really an amazing fruit. With this fruit, our Flying Heaven sect is like a tiger that has grown wings. He then hesitated for a moment before asking, where did you pick this fruit from? The Arcane Realm, the Tianfeng sect's Arcane Realm. Chu Li replied. He told them what happened. Not only did Sang Qingyun and the other two lose their excitement, but their expressions became solemn. Just this purple fruit alone could make people so powerful. If the Tianfeng sect had the entire Arcane Realm, how powerful would they be? Just thinking about it was scary. What was even scarier was that the Tianfeng sect would definitely come to destroy them. They were their mortal enemies. Chu Li said, let's focus on what's in front of us first. Whatever strength we can get, it's better than nothing. The three of them struggled to raise their spirits and slowly nodded. No matter what, whatever strength they could get, it was better than nothing. At least they would have a higher chance of escaping. No matter how powerful the Tianfeng sect was, they would not be able to fight back if they did not grow stronger. The four of them teleported back to the sect leader's basilica, who Tianlai was guarding there. There were already 2 men and 2 women standing in the basilica. The men were handsome, while the women were beautiful. They stood there quietly. When they saw Chu Li and the others, the 4 of them fist saluted. Chu Li looked at Hu Tianlai. Hu Tianlai said, I have already said that they are willing to test the medicine. Chu Li looked at the 4 of them. The handsome young man on the far left fist saluted and said, "Sect leader, we will not refuse." Chu Li nodded gently and smiled. "With me here, your lives will not be in danger. Don't worry and try it." "Yes." The four of them said in a low voice. Chu Li said, "Sect leader who? Give each of them a fruit." The effects of the purple fruit only strengthened their bodies and inner energy. There were no other abnormalities. Even if there were any abnormalities, it would not be a problem with him around. "Yes." Hu Tianlai fist saluted and turned to take out 4 purple fruits from the basilica for the 4 of them. They took it and ate it without hesitation. They finished it in a few bites and did not even leave the seeds behind. "Sit down and circulate your energy," Chu Li said. The 4 of them sat cross-legged on the steps and closed their eyes to circulate their energy. In the blink of an eye, white steam evaporated. Sang Qingyun stared at them without blinking, afraid that he would miss the chance to save them. He could understand what the 4 of them were feeling. It was as if they were immersed in lava. It was so hot that they had nowhere to escape. Chu Li stared at the 4 of them and used the omniscient mirror to observe the minute changes in their bodies. They were getting stronger bit by bit. As their meridians expanded, their inner energy also changed. The spiritual energy of the fruit was very strange. It was similar to the aura of his Holy Spirit scripture. About 2 hours later, the 4 of them slowly opened their eyes. A cold light flashed in their eyes, but they soon recovered their gentleness and calmness. Their cultivations had increased by a large amount, stepping into another level. Moreover, they were calm and gentle, without the slightest sign of losing control of their cultivation. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. The effects of the purple fruit were still there. It was just that it had melted into their flesh and was released bit by bit. It would slowly strengthen them. Compared to releasing it completely in Sang Qingyun's body, the effect might be weaker, but it was gentler. From the looks of it, the higher the cultivation level of the person who consumed the purple fruit, the greater the increase and the more pain they would feel. "Great!" Hu Tianlai was overjoyed. They could clearly feel the changes in the 4 of them. This is equivalent to 10 years of their cultivation. Wanren said. Sang Qingyun nodded. "And there are no side effects." "Not bad, not bad." He had been feeling it carefully. There was no discomfort from the sudden increase in energy. His body was light, and he could control it freely. It was as if all of this was his own cultivation. The purple fruit only condensed time and sped it up. Chu Li muttered, "All right then, 1 for each of us then." "1 for each?" Sang Qingyun and the others frowned. "Isn't that a little too extravagant?" Hu Tianlai said, "Sect leader, why don't we let the Templar Demon Guards take it first? We can take the rest when we have merit." Chapter 2442. But Wanren frowned. Chu Li said, "There are a total of 1,332 disciples. I will continue to get the rest. Arrange for the disciples to consume it first. You guys take good care of them. After all, it's still dangerous to consume it like this." "Don't worry, sect leader. We will keep a close eye on them." Hu Tianlai nodded. Chu Li waved his hand. "Let's begin. I'll get more." "Yes." The 4 of them were excited, and their fighting spirit rose again. So what if the Tianfeng sect was powerful? The Flying Heaven sect was also growing stronger. Chu Li chuckled and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in the realm again and began to harvest the purple fruits. He harvested 401 go. This forest was huge. Even after harvesting so many purple fruits, many were still hidden under the thick leaves. He thought of Goddess Attraction Mountain, the lower realm, and even Lu Yurong and the others. In the end, he did not take them back. He left some in the sect and would give them to them in the future. The most important thing now was to continue exploring the realm and find more rare plants and spirit fruits. Now that the mystic realm had just opened, very few people knew about it, so it was not chaotic. Once the news spread, everyone would know about the existence of the mystic realm, and it would definitely become chaotic. There were many strange techniques in the world, and there was no lack of people like him who had sneaked in. Even if they could not sneak in and were killed, it would still alert the Tianfeng sect. While he observed the little beast, he also looked for other beasts. Although there weren't many wild beasts in the mystic realm, there were still some. He observed more than 10 wild beasts at the same time, keeping an eye on their food and habits. He first came into contact with these wild beasts to see what kind of fruit they ate. If it was poisonous, he would immediately abandon their food. Through comparison, he obtained a total of 6 spirit fruits before going up the mountain. He took them out one by one and shared them with Lu Qingxue. Later, Lu Qingxue disappeared and refused to accept the favor. Even so, he obtained 3 spirit fruits. One was the size of a grape, and 2 were the size of a longan. They were not big, but contained strong spiritual energy. Their effects were not inferior to the purple fruits. Chuli did not know their names, so he named them Purple Jade, Black Grape, and Dragon Eye. The last 2 spirit fruits that Lu Qingxue did not get were the size of an apple. One was red, and the other was green. He named them red and green fruits. As for the purple fruit that he obtained first, he named it Zihua. Each of these spirit fruits had different effects. Some strengthened the body, some aided a certain kind of internal energy, some aided yang qi, some aided yin qi, some were suitable for women, some were suitable for men, and so on. However, after consuming these spiritual fruits, both the Flying Heaven sect and the Dancing Butterfly sect had improved by leaps and bounds. The strength of their disciples had increased by several folds. If it weren't for the suppression of the Tianfeng sect, they would have been able to dominate the world. If the Heaven-Devouring sect and the Izumo sect were to attack now, the Soaring Heaven sect would no longer be afraid. They would be able to suppress them. Early in the morning, Chuli continued to walk up the mountain. He wanted to cross this mountain. There would definitely be more spiritual fruits at the back. Normally, the deeper one went into the secret territory, the more powerful the exotic flowers and herbs would be, and the greater the harvest would be. The reason why it was so peaceful here, to the point that there were no disciples of the Heavenly Wind sect guarding the place, was probably because they didn't care about this place at all. Even if someone came to take it, they could do as they pleased. Chuli soon reached the top of the mountain. The spiritual energy at the top of the mountain was getting denser and denser. Looking down, there was only a vast forest. Other than the forest, nothing else could be seen. Chuli frowned. He could vaguely feel the aura of a formation. It was obvious that a formation had been set up here. No wonder the Tianfeng sect did not care about this place. Instead, they were protected by a formation. It must be a powerful formation. He channeled his energy and focused it on his eyes. He wanted to see through this formation, but he realized that he couldn't. Not only was this formation powerful, but it was also huge. As he cultivated the cultivation of spirit technique, his soul became stronger and his omniscient mirror improved. He could see through ordinary formations at a glance and break them immediately. Moreover, his formation skills were getting better and better. Combined with the omniscient mirror, it was easier for him to break through formations. However, he couldn't see through the huge formation in front of him no matter how he channeled his energy. Even if he couldn't see through it, he wasn't too worried. He was not afraid of formations now. With the heavenly demonic air, devouring technique, and the life and death scripture, he could control the earth. Once the two of them combined, he would be able to form a world of his own. The formation would not be able to affect him, and he could break through the power of the formation on his own. He turned his head and looked around. His eyes were filled with strange flowers and plants, but he was no longer satisfied. He just wanted to pass through the formation and get stronger flowers and plants. Before he passed through, he observed carefully to see if there were any living creatures or disciples of the Tianfeng sect. It was easy to pass through the formation, but it was not easy to not disturb the formation. Once the power of heaven and earth collided, there would be a commotion. In the evening, he finally decided to go inside. There was no point in delaying any longer because he couldn't see any living creatures around. It was obvious that this formation was powerful and overbearing. It left no chance of survival. He could only force his way through. He walked down the mountain step by step and stepped into the vast forest. The endless forest made people feel hopeless. It was like being lost in the sea, and one's power was extremely weak. He controlled the heaven and earth, and all the formations could not affect him. Everywhere he passed, the forest was indeed a forest. It did not seem like a formation, but a real forest. He controlled the spiritual energy under his feet and suppressed the kudzu vines that wanted to entangle him. He walked calmly. Not only were these kudzu vines tough, but they were also poisonous. There were some bones under the kudzu vines. Not only were there animal bones, but there were also human bones. It was obvious that someone had passed through and died unjustly. Chu looked at these bones and shook his head. He could deduce that they were disciples of the Tianfeng sect because of the heavenly wind technique. Even in death, the aura of the heavenly wind technique was still present in the bones. Therefore, the heavenly wind technique was mysterious and connected to the mysteries of heaven and earth. Once it was cultivated to perfection, it would become the ubiquitous wind. It was a pity that the heavenly wind technique was too difficult to cultivate, and it was not easy to pass it down. Almost no one could accept the true inheritance. It had a shocking requirement of spiritual energy. He felt that in this world, other than himself, Song Wuji would not be able to bear it. He suddenly thought of the ruins that Fu Kaiwei and Sui Miaozhi mentioned. He must explore it. The spirit cultivation technique was too mysterious and had a shocking origin. If he did not explore it, he would not be able to bear it. After passing through the kudzu vine formation, there was a field of beautiful flowers. Each flower was yellow and pure, and it made one's mind clear and energetic. The faint fragrance of the flowers was refreshing and fascinating. He had the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture and the heavenly wind technique to neutralize the fragrance of the flowers. He walked past it calmly. There were 10 disciples of the Tianfeng sect in this field of flowers. All of their faces were lifelike, and they had intoxicated smiles on their faces. It was as if they had entered the most beautiful dream. Dying in a dream was not necessarily a bad thing. Chu Li's heart trembled. This kind of flower killed people invisibly, but he did not know why the disciples of the Tianfeng sect would barge in. They must have been greedy and wanted to find some rare flowers and herbs. As he continued to walk forward, he came to another forest. The branches were as thin and soft as hair, much thinner than willow branches. It was as if thousands of beautiful hair were hanging down and dancing in the air with the wind. The strands were everywhere. Chu Li furrowed his brows. He took out some cotton from his inner pocket and stuffed his nose and ears with it. He closed his eyes and walked slowly, afraid that he would startle them. Even so, the fine silk fluttered and fell on him. Chapter 2443. These filaments were everywhere, as if they had merged with the air. They floated around like fine rain or fluff. Even if one did not disturb them, they would still fall on one's body. Chu Li's body tensed up. He was inexplicably nervous. He could clearly feel the terror of these filaments. They entered his body through holes and into his blood. No matter how strong he was, he could not do anything to them. Once they entered his body, he would be in danger. This was what his intuition told him, but he did not know what these filaments were. He turned into a breeze and circulated the heavenly wind technique continuously. When the filaments floated over, they were blown away by the invisible wind and could not fall on his body. At first glance, he really did turn into a gust of wind. However, he did not dare to be careless. The hair on his body stood on end. This was due to his intuition. He slowly walked a few steps and saw that the ground was covered with bones. Some were animal bones, some were human bones. The bones were white and flawless, without a trace of dirt. This made him even more vigilant. If the bones were like this, it meant that the human's flesh and blood had been devoured. That was why the bones were so clean. No matter how strong he was, his flesh and blood would disappear after death. Even with the life and death scripture, it would be difficult to resurrect him. The heavenly wind technique circulated even faster. Looking at the human bones on the ground, he sighed. He could not underestimate the heroes of the world. The first 2 stages were so difficult, but someone still made it. Looking at the number of bones on the ground, there were many people who made it. The heavenly wind technique circulated faster. He passed through the place where the filaments floated. The scene before him suddenly changed. It was a plain with lush green grass. The world seemed to come alive. Chu Li's intuition warned him again. This grassy plain was extremely dangerous. He slowly walked forward step by step. Just as he stepped on the grass, his feet were already floating in the air. He did not touch the green grass. TSK, 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 TSK. The green grass suddenly jumped up as if there were countless hands trying to pull him down. However, Chu Li did not dare to jump too high. Otherwise, he would attract even more attacks. Once again, he circulated his heavenly wind technique, and an invisible wind blew at the green grass that had risen to his feet. The grass became thin and long, like the green algae in the water rippling with the waves. The heavenly wind spell circulated. As he rose higher, he also took the opportunity to caress the green grass. They were not grass at all, but strange plants similar to man-eating flowers. Without a strong enough heavenly wind spell, once he was surrounded by them, he would not be able to escape. Just looking at the human bones in the depths of the grass, one could tell how powerful they were. Chu Li sighed to himself. He did not know how many people had died in this arcane realm. It was possible that some of the skeletons were not from recent years, but from tens of thousands of years ago. It could be the price paid by the ancestors of the Tianfeng sect to explore the arcane realm. The exploration of the arcane realm came at the cost of human lives. The heavenly wind incantation carried him forward slowly. Patches of grass grew taller, wanting to devour him, but they were pacified by the invisible wind. They stopped when they touched his feet. Through the power of the earth, he could feel the berserk intent. These green grasses were even more ferocious than ferocious beasts. It was as if they had finally found their prey and would not let it go easily. Only the inner energy of the heavenly wind incantation could pacify them. Chu Li could not help but sigh. No wonder the arcane realm could not be occupied by force. No matter how powerful a person was, they would definitely die if they did not cultivate the heavenly wind incantation. Even Song Wuji would die if he came. These strange grasses were too powerful. He slowly walked forward and passed through the 10 miles of grassland. In front of him was a valley. The valley was surrounded by mountains. White clouds covered the peaks of the mountains, and only the waist of the mountains could be seen. Chu Li frowned as he looked at the valley in front of him. He wanted to turn around and leave. Only then did he realize that he had walked directly towards the valley. This gave him a very bad feeling. It was as if a pocket had been propped up and was waiting for him to crawl into it. It felt like a trap. However, at this point, he did not want to enter the valley. He could only go back the way he came. Therefore, he turned left and began to climb the mountain. He wanted to pass through the mountains and pass through the valley without entering. The mountain was steep, and there were countless strange flowers and grasses. Every step he took was dangerous. Chu Li took each step with difficulty, and every step he took was filled with fear. Finally, he arrived at the waist of the mountain. Looking at the clouds below, he began to walk forward instead of continuing to climb. There was no path around him, only countless strange flowers and grasses. Chu Li was already numb. Looking at these strange flowers and grasses with abundant spiritual energy and extraordinary medicinal effects, it seemed that none of them were inferior to the ones he had picked. Unfortunately, these could not determine the efficacy of the herbs. Some of them were extremely poisonous. Even if one did not come into contact with them, they would die if they got close. Some of them had strange effects, and not many people could withstand them. He did not fly through the air. His intuition told him not to do so, or else there would be greater danger. Although he did not know what danger was, he was very curious and followed his intuition's warning. There were many Buddhas and heavenly demons in his mind. When he cultivated it to a profound level, he could faintly merge with the Buddhas and heavenly demons in the void. There were some strange abilities that he could not understand. They could not be expressed in words, and could only be manifested through intuition. Step by step, he made his way through the forest with difficulty. Walking along the mountain, every step was thrilling. If it was not for his strong will, he would have fallen into despair. He felt that it was even more dangerous than losing his shelter in the ocean. In a vast world, danger was everywhere. He had to be vigilant at all times, and the slightest mistake would lead to eternal damnation. After walking for more than 100 miles, the sky had completely darkened. A bright moon shone in the sky, like a rotating ice wheel. The moonlight poured down like milk. Chu Li realized that the moonlight here was different from the moonlight outside. He reached out his hand to touch it. It was invisible, but it had substance. It was an incomparably pure and refreshing spiritual energy. It directly entered his body and circulated with the heavenly wind technique, turning into the inner energy of the heavenly wind technique. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. Cultivating under this kind of moonlight could increase the speed by 10 times. 1 year was equivalent to 10 years for others. Why would he worry about the disciples' martial arts not being strong enough? As long as they lay dormant for 10 years, when this group of disciples went out, they would be able to crush all the sections. This was indeed the heavenly wind sect. Whoa! A low moan suddenly sounded. Although this moan was soft, it sounded like thunder in his ears. Chu Li suddenly had the urge to turn around and run away. His hair stood on end and his expression changed. The omniscient mirror had already observed a wolf standing in the valley. It looked up at the round moon and let out a low moan from time to time. It was unlike other wolves that howled at the sky. Chu Li concluded that this was not a wolf. It only looked like one. Wolves would not make such a low and soft moan. Moreover, after this wolf-like animal let out a low moan, the surroundings became quiet and all movement disappeared. He felt the pressure from his soul, and it was not just the inner energy. It was like a monarch that ruled this valley and the surrounding mountains. All the beasts and rare plants seemed to be in awe of it. This made Chu Li more afraid, and he did not dare to move. It suddenly turned its head and looked at Chu Li. The two of them were a few miles apart. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to observe, but their eyes met in the air. Chu Li suddenly trembled, and his expression changed. Chapter 2444. Yo! Chu Li pushed his palm forward. It was the purest heaven gale palm, soundless. Bam! The wolf-like animal seemed to have hit a rock and let out a muffled sound. This was the wonder of the heaven gale palm. It could disperse or condense according to one's will. However, it was not hindered when it hit the heaven gale palm. It shattered the heaven gale palm and reached Chu Li with its claws. Chu Li shifted into the void and dodged it. Although it had locked the void, Chu Li had the heavenly demonic aerial manipulation technique. He was not affected and could even shift into the void. Heaven gale technique and the heavenly demonic scripture did not affect each other. Chu Li hit its back with his left palm as he shifted. It wanted to shift, but was blocked by the heavenly demonic aerial manipulation technique. It paused for a moment and still could not escape the heaven gale palm. The heaven gale palm penetrated its smooth and soft fur. Half of it had already been shaved off. Once it entered its body, a turbulent force immediately swallowed the heaven gale palm. Chu Li's expression changed. He knew the situation was bad. The beast's inner energy was far superior to his. Competing with it in inner energy would be suicidal. As he retreated, his eyes flashed blue. Bam, 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 bam. A series of muffled sounds rang in the void. The thunder sword collided with the strange force in the air, producing a thunderous sound that shook one's mind and made it difficult for one to concentrate. Chu Li's expression changed. He had guessed correctly. This beast's spiritual energy was strong, and it knew spiritual attack techniques. It was on par with the thunder sword. This was really troublesome. Bam, 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 bam. Chu Li did not give up and continued to attack. The god-punishing thunder sword rained down on him like a rain of swords, and the muffled sounds rang out incessantly. Meanwhile, the rare beast stood in the void and looked down at him. Its gem-like eyes seemed to be smiling, and it was obvious that it had gained human intelligence. Chu Li frowned and continued to use the god-punishing thunder sword. He did not believe that his spiritual energy was stronger than this rare beast's. But after attacking for 15 minutes in one go, he knew that it was useless to use the god-punishing thunder sword. This rare beast's spiritual energy was unimaginably strong. This beast was no longer a wild beast. It had reached the level of a spirit beast or even a spirit tiger. It was meaningless to continue fighting. He had used his ultimate move, but it had not. It would be best if he did not have the chance to experience it. He turned around and was about to teleport away. With the Sky Demon Aerial Mastery Art, he was not afraid of the Void Lock at all. He could break through it directly. However, in the next moment, his vision suddenly went black. He lost his sense of heaven and earth, as if he had fallen into endless darkness. Mahavairocana's immobility scripture immediately circulated on its own. Incantations came out from Mahavairocana's mouth. At the same time, it formed a seal. Suddenly, its eyes lit up as it realized that its claw was already nearing its Baihui acupoint. He only had time to raise his hand to block. Bang! He felt as if his entire body had been struck by lightning. His entire body trembled and became numb. He wanted to exert strength, but was unable to do so. Bam, 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 bam. Like a rubber ball, he was being pounced on by the beasts. He could barely block with his hands, but he couldn't block the overwhelming force. He could only use the Heavenly Wind art to reduce the force of the impact. This rare beast seemed to be able to cross the void and was always in front of him. It kept raising its claws and slapping him away. Chu Li felt as if his internal organs were being crushed. Its power was strange. Once it entered his body, his Heavenly Wind incantation couldn't stop it at all. If it wasn't for the fact that his body was inhumanly strong, he would have turned into minced meat by now. After more than 10 attacks from the rare beast, he was at his limit and could no longer resist. Woo! It suddenly let out a faint whimper. Chu Li's vision went black again. He started chanting the Mahavairocana's immobility scripture. When he regained consciousness, he realized that his chest was empty. When he looked down, his heart had disappeared and was being chewed on in its mouth. All the energy drilled into his heart like water from a broken dam. His body instantly became weak, and he couldn't exert any strength. It stood 10 meters away from Chu Li and chewed on his heart. With a swipe of its tongue, it licked the blood from the corner of its mouth. Not a single trace of blood could be seen on its mouth. Its eyes revealed a satisfied look. Chu Li suddenly understood why the wild beasts in the area were all killed by it. Its spirit was strong, and its inner energy was strong, but it had a savage nature. Although it wasn't a wolf, it had the nature of a wolf and wouldn't allow other creatures to survive. It was the only one in its territory. It was no wonder that the Heavenly Wind sect didn't set up any guards. It was the arcane realm's natural guardian. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Chu Li used his remaining energy to activate the Heavenly Demon Scripture and disappeared in a flash. Roar! The rare beast suddenly leaped and landed on the spot where Chu Li had been. There was a puddle of Chu Li's blood on the ground. It gently exhaled, and the puddle of blood instantly vanished into thin air, forming a huge pit. The exotic flowers and plants around it were all crushed and fluttered in the air, but none of them touched the rare beast. Chu Li suddenly appeared in the sect leader's basilica. Sang Qingyun was guarding the basilica. When he saw Chu Li suddenly appear and saw his empty chest, his expression changed, and he cried out, "Sect leader!" Chu Li waved his hand and said, "Give me the red fruits." Honghua and the others had already tested the effects of the medicine. It could strengthen the heart and increase the strength of the heartbeat by a few times, thus increasing the body's explosive power by a few times. Sang Qingyun disappeared in a flash and appeared in the next moment with 10 red fruits in his hands. He quickly handed them to Chu Li. Chu Li directly swallowed 10 and said slowly, "Don't spread the news about me, so that the disciples don't panic." Seeing that Chu Li could still insist on talking without a heart, Sang Qingyun was relieved. He frowned and said worriedly, "Sect leader, your injury. It's okay, as long as I don't die on the spot." Chu Li shook his head and said, "I need to isolate myself for a few days." "Yes." Sang Qingyun nodded and said, "Junior Brother Wan and I will personally protect you." Chu Li waved his hand and said, "No need, in case it alarms others. I'm fine." But Sang Qingyun felt that this was not a big deal. Chu Li smiled and closed his eyes. Sang Qingyun watched as a piece of tender flesh gradually appeared on his chest and continued to grow until it finally turned into a heart that slowly beat. The beating became stronger and stronger. Then, the skin outside grew and gradually covered the heart. 2 hours later, Chuli opened his eyes. This strange flower and fruit was indeed amazing. Regrowing flesh and bones was not a joke. It could really be done. The fact that he could recover so easily this time was all due to the effect of the red fruit. Otherwise, it would have taken a few days. Sect leader, Sang Qingyun's eyes widened. Chuli smiled and said, "The red fruit is really good." Sang Qingyun sighed and said, "Sect leader's cultivation level is also amazing. Not to mention, just the fact that he was able to escape without a heart and was still able to speak was enough to show that his body was unimaginably strong." Chuli smiled and said, "Did the disciples have any accidents recently? They are all advancing bravely and everyone's morale is high." Sang Qingyun said, "They are all thinking of entering the sanctuary." Chuli smiled and said, "It's not that easy to enter the sanctuary." Chapter 2445. Chuli shook his head and sighed. The arcane realm is really dangerous. What happened to sect leader? Sang Qingyun said, "I don't think anyone in the world can hurt sect leader like this. Even Song Wuji couldn't do it. Was it an ambush by those old demons?" Chuli said, "It's a spirit beast." "There's a spirit beast in the arcane realm?" Sang Qingyun was surprised. "Don't spirit beasts only stay in the 100,000 hills?" Chuli spread his hands. "There are always exceptions. This spirit beast is not an ordinary spirit beast. Forget it. Let's watch them cultivate. Once Tianfeng's sect leaves the arcane realm, it will be a battle of life and death." "Yes." Sang Qingyun nodded. "Are you sure you don't want to open the gates of the sanctuary?" He felt that at this time, the Saint Hall should lower the requirements, allowing more people to enter the Saint Hall to further their studies and cultivate the Flying Divine Fiend art. The Flying Divine Fiend art was mysterious. It could increase their cultivation faster and increase their strength. Chuli shook his head. "No matter when, the rules cannot be changed. The conditions of the sanctuary must be met to enter and cultivate the flying demon technique." "Yes." Sang Qingyun nodded helplessly. Although he did not understand, he could only do as he was told. Chuli's prestige was like the sun in the sky. Especially this time, he had obtained so many spirit fruits for the sect. The talismans could improve the strength of the sect disciples. No one objected to his words. As he spoke, he suddenly thought of something and waved his hand. "Go, I will explore again." "Sect leader, be careful," Sang Qingyun said. Chuli smiled and suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared outside the Great Dream Sect leader's hall. Cheng Yuan and Lu Qingxue were standing in front of the hall. Seeing him appear, Cheng Yuan waved his hand and the three entered the hall. Chuli glanced at Lu Qingxue and she shook her head gently. He was relieved. It seemed that Cheng Yuan did not know about their little tricks. However, Cheng Yuan could not be underestimated or he would really fall into his trap. "UNC, Qingxue, I called you over today because there is a joyous occasion." Cheng Yuan laughed. Chuli smiled and said, "Sect leader, Cheng has recovered. Congratulations." "This is not a joyous occasion." Cheng Yuan waved his hand and smiled. "There is finally news from the arcane realm." Lu Qingxue asked in surprise, "There's news?" "Yes, I've already received news from my insider. Their first batch of disciples has already left the mystic realm." Cheng Yuan nodded and said, "Isn't it a little too fast?" "It's too fast," Chuli said. "Even if there's a fortuitous encounter, it should have stayed for a few days." They consumed the spirit fruit and came out to attack the Flying Heavens sect. Cheng Yuan looked at Chuli. Chuli frowned. "They're going to deal with us now. Those old monsters haven't made a move against Song Wuji yet, have they? Looks like they're not going to touch Song Wuji." Cheng Yuan sighed. "This plan won't work. It's very troublesome." He was extremely fearful of these old monsters. He was definitely not a match for them, so he could only rely on Wu Yuanci. However, Wu Yuanci was not a fool either. On the contrary, He was extremely intelligent. As the two of them plotted against each other, it was hard to say who would win. Chu Li said, "Fortunately, the disciples in the sect have been relocated. This is not a long-term solution." Cheng Yuan shook his head and sighed. "The best way is to enter the arcane realm. I'm going in." Chu Li nodded. "It's good to go in." Cheng Yuan chuckled. "UNC, you're not going with us?" Chu Li said, "I'll pass. It'll be difficult for me to fight Zheng De and the others outside. I'll definitely die if I go in. I advised sect leader Cheng not to go." "I'm definitely going in." Cheng Yuan smiled. He secretly frowned. He did not expect Wu UNC to not fall for his trick. If it was someone else, they would definitely agree. Who could resist the temptation of the arcane realm? Wu UNC could. Lu Qingxue said, "It's better not to go. You know it's dangerous. Why do you want to force your way in?" "But there are too many exotic flowers and spirit fruits in there." Cheng Yuan sighed and shook his head. "If you obtain each of them, you can increase your skills by several years or even decades. If you're lucky, you can increase your skills to the level of those old monsters before you meet them. More importantly, I've received news that those old monsters are in isolated cultivation and won't be coming out for a while. Who can say for sure when they're in isolated cultivation?" Chu Li shook his head. He knew that once he stepped into the arcane realm, he would not be able to escape the wolf-like spirit beast attack. It had a strong spiritual energy and naturally had keen senses. Once he stepped into the arcane realm, it would be able to sense it and arrive in an instant. "That's right." Lu Qingxue nodded. "It's said that they'll be in isolated cultivation for a long time. What if they come out early? You only have one life. If you enter the arcane realm, you might not be able to escape, even with the void-breaching bead." Cheng Yuan frowned and pondered. The void-breaching bead was not omnipotent. Once those old monsters were defeated, unless he discovered them in advance and activated the void-breaching bead to return before they attacked, he would not even have the chance to use the void-breaching bead. Lu Qingxue said, "Forget it. No way." Cheng Yuan shook his head slowly and finally made up his mind. "I've received news that there are a total of 10 spirit fruits that can be consumed. Among them, there's 100 leaves grass that can increase one's cultivation by 100 years. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He had never seen 100 leaves grass before. From the name, it was obvious that there were many leaves, far more than other plants. Moreover, it could increase one's cultivation by 100 years. It was not something that ordinary exotic flowers and herbs could compare to. Lu Qingxue said in disbelief, 100 years of cultivation? Even the divine demon herb can't reach that level, right? Who said that the divine demon herb can't reach that level? Cheng Yuan scoffed. The divine demon herb can only be released slowly. Yuan Si won't be so powerful if it doesn't reach 100 years. Chu Li said, the divine demon herb can reach that level, but the arcane realm cannot compare to the first heaven after all. The divine demon herb may not be the top spirit herb on the first heaven. Cheng Yuan said eagerly, Yuan Si, come with me. There are a total of 10 spirit herbs. We'll split them in half. He turned to look at Lu Qingxue. There's still a portion for Qingxue. I'll take a third of it. How about that? Lu Qingxue waved her hand. I don't want it. I won't take advantage of you. She had already taken advantage of Chu Li. The disciples' cultivation levels had increased greatly and seemed to have reached their limits. Taking more spirit herbs would not have any effect. Moreover, taking so many foreign items at once might not be good for the body. You really don't want it? Cheng Yuan asked. Lu Qingxue shook her head. Spirit herbs are good, but your life is more important. As a sect leader, it would be irresponsible to the sect to let go of this opportunity. Cheng Yuan said solemnly. He was a little impatient. He did not expect that she would not be persuaded even with such a temptation. Qingxue was fine because he did not want her to take the risk. However, Wu Yuanci had to be persuaded. She was the best shield. Without Wu Yuanci, he would not have the confidence to enter the arcane realm. Chu Li sighed. Sect leader Cheng, let's wait a little longer. Let's see if anyone barges in. He did not dare to enter again in the short term. He needed to improve his cultivation level before he dared to enter the arcane realm. If he could not suppress that strange beast, he would be courting death if he went in. Sigh. Chung Yuan shook his head. I thought you were all very bold, but I didn't expect you to be so timid. Chu Li smiled and did not refute. Chapter 2446. Chu Li asked, Sect Leader Chung, where is that disciple? Yuan Si, why are you asking this? Chung Yuan frowned and stared at him. This was a taboo. Logically speaking, as the sect leader, Yuan Si should know. He should not have asked this, but there must be a reason for him to do so. Chu Li asked, is there a correct way to enter the arcane realm in the message sent by this disciple? Of course there is. Chung Yuan nodded. The arcane realm is actually very dangerous. If you're not careful, you will lose your life. I was the best example. Chu Li frowned. Sect leader, do you not doubt the authenticity of this disciple's words? He must be loyal. Chung Yuan shook his head. He will not betray us. Chu Li smiled. It's better to confirm it before entering. This involves your life, sect leader Chung. It is of great importance. That makes sense. Chung Yuan said slowly. He was initially confident in that disciple. His heart was filled with excitement and impatience. He wanted to go in and pick the spirit fruit to enhance his strength and the great dream sect strength. The long-cherished wish of more than 10 generations could be realized. Now that he was reminded by Chu Li, he suddenly realized that he should be suspicious. One could not believe a person's words, or he would really get himself into trouble. Chu Li said, Sect Leader Chung, I am not talented, but I have an ability to distinguish the truth of others' words. Chung Yuan raised his eyebrows. Chu Li smiled. There are 2 disciples of Sect Leader Chung in the Flying Heaven sect, right? They're no longer in the sect now. They're cleaning up in the old sect. Chung Yuan touched his chin awkwardly and smiled. This is a normal procedure. After all, know yourself and know your enemy. They have no intention of harming others. Chu Li smiled. These 2 disciples really have no intention of harming others, so I spared them. However, I can't return them to Sect Leader Chung. Well said, well said. They have a future in the Flying Heaven sect. Chung Yuan smiled. Lu Qingxue curled her red lips. She was quite dissatisfied with his methods. Since the informant disciple was discovered, he should think of a way to get him back. It was really cold to just abandon him like that. Chu Li said, Since sect leader Chung has spoken, I'll gladly accept it. Their aptitudes are quite good. With his methods, it would not be difficult for him to change their minds and make them wholeheartedly loyal to the Flying Heaven School. Moreover, he was not that loyal to the Great Dream School. Chung Yuan hid his embarrassment and smiled. Then, Yuan Si, can you really tell if it's real or fake? Chu Li said, if one's cultivation level isn't that high, it's not difficult to distinguish between the truth and lies. All right, then let's arrange a meeting. Chung Yuan nodded slowly. He was already going all out. He cupped his fists and suddenly disappeared. Lu Qingxue said, Yuan Si, why do you care about this? She was rather puzzled. Even if they didn't want to enter the secret realm, why did they have to care about whether the words of Chung Yuan's spy were true or not? It was a busybody that would only complicate matters. Chu Li said, we can't just watch as Sect Leader Chung dies. Whether we enter or not, Sect Leader Chung will definitely enter the secret realm. It's always good to have an extra layer of protection. Lu Qingxue sighed softly and shook her head. I'm afraid your kindness might not be returned with sincerity. It's better to be more careful. Seeing how Chu Li treated Chung Yuan with such sincerity, she felt that it was not worth it. She felt pity for him and could not help but remind him lest he would be harmed by Chung Yuan in the future. Chu Li smiled. Thank you, Senior Lu. As the 2 were talking, Chung Yuan suddenly appeared with a disciple in a green shirt. Chu Li sized up the disciple in green shirt and felt the warm aura from his body. It was the Heaven Wind technique, an extremely pure Heaven Wind technique. A disciple like this was obviously one of the core members of the Heaven Wind sect. It was no wonder he could spread the news. There must be a reason why Chung Yuan was so sure of his loyalty. Ji Chao, this is sect leader Lu Qingxue and sect leader Wu Yuanxi. Chung Yuan looked at the disciple in green shirt and smiled. They admire you for sending news about the secret realm and are thanking you in person. Master, the 2 sect leaders are also entering the secret realm? Kong Jichao Fi saluted Chu Li and Lu Qingxue as a form of greeting. He was rather arrogant. In my opinion, forget it. Jichao. Cheng Yuan's face darkened. Speak properly. I'm doing this for the sake of the two sect leaders. Without the pure heaven-wind technique, entering the secret realm will only lead to death. There's no way out. Kong Jichao said in a low voice. Who doesn't know that? Cheng Yuan said impatiently. They're more curious about the secret realm. Tell them in detail. Master. Kong Jichao looked at him reluctantly. Cheng Yuan said, don't. Gather? Pray to Ba Deng to block the bad guys? Soul. Yes. Kong Jichao nodded helplessly and looked at Chu Li and Lu Qingxue. Sect leaders, what do you want to ask? As long as I know it. Lu Qingxue looked at Chu Li. Chu Li said, young hero Kong is out of the secret realm now. Yes. Kong Jichao nodded. We've already left the secret realm. Each of us has been in the secret realm for a month. Chu Li smiled. The spiritual energy in the secret realm is abundant. Cultivation speed is greatly increased, right? Yes. Kong Jichao said. Chu Li said, is there only one way to enter the secret realm? Or can we just go in randomly? There's only one way, and it must be a cultivator of Heaven Wind technique, a disciple of Heaven Wind sect. Kong Jichao said in a low voice. If other sects enter, they'll definitely die. Chu Li smiled. What if it's the wrong way? What will we encounter? Let's put it this way. If you're not a disciple of Heaven Wind sect, there will be danger everywhere in the secret realm. It's impossible to guard against it. Even if your cultivation level is as high as the heavens, there's nothing you can do. Kong Jichao shook his head and sighed. The secret realm is not something that can be won by humans. Chu Li nodded. Can you tell us about this path so that we can take a look? This. Kong Jichao looked at Cheng Yuan. Cheng Yuan said, then let's hear it. Both sect leaders are not outsiders. All right. Kong Jichao said, actually, this path is very simple. It's just that it's not easy to be discovered. After entering the secret realm, there'll be a peak. After going over this mountain, there'll be a valley. After passing through the valley, you'll enter the Heaven Wind sect. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. There'll be a lot of danger along the way, right? As long as you cultivate the Heaven Wind technique, there won't be any danger. Of course, if the Heaven Wind technique is not pure enough, you'll also encounter danger. Kong Jichao shook his head. Chu Li smiled. If that's the case, it's not dangerous for you. If some disciples cultivate a heart technique that's not from our sect, there'll be danger too. Kong Jichao sighed. More than 10 people from the same sect died along the way. They were all spies from other sects, just like me. He turned his head to look at Cheng Yuan and smiled. Master is farsighted. He let me build my foundation with the heart technique of Heaven Wind technique. If not, I'll definitely die in the secret realm this time. No one can hide from the secret realm. As he spoke, he revealed a look of lingering fear. Cheng Yuan stroked his beard and smiled. He was also very proud of his wisdom. If it were not for that, Kong Jichao would be dead now. It was impossible for him to survive the secret realm. Therefore, he felt that Kong Jichao would not betray the Great Dream sect. Chu Li slowly nodded. Actually, the Heaven Wind sect is no worse than the Great Dream sect now. In the future, the Heaven Wind sect will definitely rise and surpass the Great Dream sect. Kong Jichao scoffed. Even if the Heaven Wind sect surpasses the Great Dream sect, I'm still a disciple of the Great Dream sect. Chapter 2447. Yes, I'm in seclusion. Kong Jichao thought about it and said, it seems like I need to go into seclusion for a long time. No one is allowed to disturb me, or it will be a capital offense. Chu Li asked, in your opinion, are they telling the truth? There's no need to lie, right? Kong Jichao frowned and said, at that time, we had already filtered out the traitors. They should have believed us, so there was no need to lie. Chu Li nodded and asked, how many types of mutant fruits have you consumed? It's different for everyone, Kong Jichao said. It depends on your latent talent. Some people eat one fruit, while others eat several. It all depends on your luck. I ate 3 fruits, so I'm considered average. Chu Li said, Now that my inner power has suddenly increased, it's comparable to my previous hard work. Isn't this a wonderful feeling? Yes. Kong Ji Chao smiled. Anyone would feel that their cultivation had suddenly skyrocketed. The feeling of reaping without sowing was too good. Moreover, they would be able to obtain another opportunity to improve in the future. As long as one contributed to the sect, they would be able to enter the arcane grounds to raise their cultivation. The greater the contribution, the more they would stand out from the crowd. In the end, they would be able to rely on their contributions to become the top disciple and become the future sect leader. The sect leader of the Heavenly Wind sect would be the realm lord of the Sky Demon realm in the future. His words would carry enormous weight. Just thinking about it made Yi Chun feel good. Only then would he be able to live in this world. Chu Li replied, "All right, I'm done with my questions. Senior Lu?" Lu Qingxue said, "I only have one question. Have you ever killed a disciple of the Dancing Butterfly sect?" "No." Kong Ji Chao's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly shook his head and said, "How could he kill the Dancing Butterfly sect's disciples? He only knows how to curry favor." As he spoke, he looked at Cheng Yuan. Cheng Yuan stroked his beard and smiled. "Don't worry, Qing Shui. None of the disciples in the sect would dare to act recklessly. They all know my taboo." Every disciple knew that he was deeply in love with Lu Qingxue. Killing a disciple of the Dancing Butterfly sect was equivalent to provoking him. Who would dare to violate this taboo? Lu Qingxue snorted. "One of my sect's disciples died mysteriously, and we haven't been able to find the murderer. Could that be Asher's doing?" Cheng Yuan smiled and said, "You should have looked for me earlier. I'll divine it, and I'll definitely be able to find the murderer." "No need." Lu Qingxue snorted. She suspected that the disciples of the Great Dream sect did it. She had a strange feeling, but she couldn't explain it. She couldn't hand it over to Cheng Yuan. Cheng Yuan shook his head and sighed. Why do you have to worry so much for your disciple?" "If it were me, I would definitely shamelessly ask for help." Lu Qingxue glared at him. Cheng Yuan chuckled and looked at Chu Li. "Yuan Si, what do you think? There's no problem with my disciple, right?" Chu Li sighed and said nothing. Cheng Yuan's expression changed slightly. "Yuan Si, what do you mean by this?" Not much of what he said was true. Chu Li sighed. "It's a pity, sect leader Cheng." Cheng Yuan frowned and stared at him, still in disbelief. Chu Li said, "Whether it's true or not, sect leader Cheng can decide for yourself." Lu Qingxue frowned. "How is that possible? These spies usually had something to worry about. It was highly possible that their parents or brothers were in the Great Dream sect, and they were related to the Great Dream sect by blood. It was impossible for them to betray the Great Dream sect, but they did." Chu Li smiled and did not say anything else. Kong Ji Chao shouted, "Sect leader Wu, you're the leader of a sect, but you're making irresponsible remarks. You're really infuriating." Chu Li looked at him calmly and did not say anything. Kong Ji Chao shouted, "Do you know how much effort you've wasted with that one sentence of yours? How many days of fear have I endured? Now you're saying that I've betrayed the sect. You should be punished. Well, have I ever offended you? Or are you plotting against the Great Dream sect?" Chu Li said, "You have a glib tongue. No wonder you can survive in the Tianfeng sect." He turned his head and smiled at Cheng Yuan. Sect leader Cheng Yuan is good at using people. Cheng Yuan frowned and looked at him, trying to figure out if he was joking. Chu Li said, "Senior Lu, let's take our leave first. I still have something to attend to." "All right." Lu Qingxue nodded and gave him a look. The two fists saluted and disappeared. The next moment, they appeared in the Dance Butterfly sect's current basilica. Chu Li glanced at them and smiled. "What does Senior Lu want to say? Kong Ji Chao really betrayed us?" Lu Qingxue asked. Chu Li nodded slowly. "There's indeed a mountain after entering the arcane realm, but there must be a secret passage in the mountain. If not, it'd be difficult to survive. Even after passing through the mountain, there's a valley with a spirit beast in the valley. I was severely injured by the spirit beast and almost lost my life. I don't dare to enter again. If I enter without knowing this..." Lu Qingxue's face darkened. Chu Li smiled. "I'll definitely die. If that's the case, Kong Jichao has betrayed us, Lu Qingxue said slowly with a heavy expression. Chu Li said, definitely. Lu Qingxue looked up at the algae well in the basilica. The patterns were complicated and beautiful. Sigh. Cheng Yuan might not believe it. Lu Qingxue sighed. He's a suspicious person. It's a common problem for smart people. Chu Li laughed. He shouldn't be suspicious when he should be, but he should be suspicious when he shouldn't be. No one could do anything about that. Yes. Lu Qingxue sighed. I'll try to persuade him. She disliked Cheng Yuan and disapproved of him. But after all, Cheng Yuan had been deeply in love with her for so many years. She couldn't just watch him jump into the fire pit and seek his own death, so she tried to persuade him as much as she could. If he really did not listen, no one could do anything about it. He could only blame himself. Chu Li said, Senior Lu, your words are useful. It's better to persuade him. I still have to thank you this time, Yuan Si. Lu Qingxue sighed. The arcane realm really makes people go crazy. It can change a loyal disciple's heart. What else can it do? Chu Li sighed. That's why Senior Lu still has to be wary of sect leader Cheng. Lu Qingxue looked at him in surprise. She was worried that Chu Li was completely loyal to Cheng Yuan and had no wariness. It seemed that no one who became the sect leader was a fool. It was not that Yuan Si was not wary. He was just pretending. Chu Li sighed. The benefits of the arcane realm are not big enough yet. Sect leader Cheng has great ambitions. If Senior Lu becomes his obstacle, I'm afraid. He shook his head as he spoke. Lu Qingxue was worried that he was not wary and was completely loyal to Cheng Yuan. He was also worried that Lu Qingxue was not wary of Cheng Yuan and would be harmed by Cheng Yuan. Although Cheng Yuan loved her deeply, when it came to the choice between love and the dream of the sect, Cheng Yuan would definitely choose the latter. Lu Qingxue met his gaze and slowly nodded. Understood. She suddenly realized that she had been too careless. It seemed that she had been guarding against Cheng Yuan, but she was not completely on guard. If Cheng Yuan really wanted to harm her, it would be very difficult to guard against him. Chu Li smiled and fist saluted. Then I'll take my leave. You're not going into the arcane realm? Lu Qingxue asked. Chu Li shook his head. I'll see after I go into isolated cultivation. Otherwise, I'll die if I go in. That's right. Lu Qingxue smiled and fist saluted. Chu Li suddenly disappeared, and Lu Qingxue appeared in front of Cheng Yuan. She looked at his smiling face and looked at Kong Jichao opposite him. It seems that I really deceived Yuan Si. Cheng Yuan clapped and laughed. Chapter 2448. Lu Qingxue frowned slightly and said unhappily, What trick? Kong Jichao closed fists, saluted, and smiled respectfully. Senior Lu, this is a show that Master and I put on to trick faction leader Wu so that he won't covet the arcane realm. He must have fallen for it. Lu Qingxue was even more displeased. She gave him a sidelong glance and looked at Cheng Yuan. Cheng Yuan chuckled. Qingxue, this can't be helped. There's only one arcane realm, and the fewer people who know about it, the better. Yuan Si's cultivation level is too high. If he really barges in, we won't be able to do anything. Didn't you try to invite him in? Lu Qingxue frowned. You're still hoping that he'll take the hit for you. Once he encountered Zheng De and the other old demons, without Wu Yuanxi, Cheng Yuan would definitely die. Even if he had a powerful defensive artifact, Zheng De and the others would not even give him a chance to use it. Cheng Yuan smiled. I suddenly understand. With Jichao's information, we can avoid those old demons. It's the same without Yuan Si. Besides, after Yuan Si goes in, he'll eat the meat and we'll drink the soup. Lu Qingxue suppressed her disdain because she was already wary. She said calmly, You're too calculative. He might not have thought that much. More calculative wins, less calculative loses. Cheng Yuan shook his head and sighed. I don't want to scheme against Yuan Si like this. Unfortunately, the spirit herbs in the arcane realm are limited. Our two sects have enough. One more, and it won't be enough. Lu Qingxue knew what he was thinking. There were enough spirit herbs in the arcane realm, but the rising sect could not be the flying heaven sect. It could only be the great dream sect to realize their long-cherished wish of unifying the heavenly demonic realm. She was too lazy to point it out. She nodded slowly, and her clear eyes fell on Kong Jichao before slowly turning away. In that case, you know the safe path to the arcane realm and can enter safely? Huh. Cheng Yuan laughed. Not only do I know the safe path, but I also know which spirit herbs can be plucked and which can't be touched. Qingxue, our rise is right in front of us. Lu Qingxue began to doubt Chu Li's judgment. Since Kong Jichao and Cheng Yuan teamed up to deceive her, Yuan Si's judgment might not be true. Did Kong Jichao not betray the Great Dream Sect? Cheng Yuan was so smart, so he would definitely be on guard, right? She thought about it, and finally decided to remind Cheng Yuan. Looking at his smug look, it was as if he was about to unify the heavenly demon realm. He might not have a meticulous mind and calm mind, so it was inevitable that he would be careless. Jichao, I'll send you back, Cheng Yuan said. In a flash, he disappeared in front of Lu Qingxue with Kong Jichao. After a while, he appeared again and said with a smile, Qing Shui, when are we going to make our move? I'll go in. You stay outside. Is there really nothing wrong with this Kong Jichao? Lu Qingxue frowned. Since Yuan Si said there's something wrong with him, I'm sure she's right. Cheng Yuan restrained his excitement and said with a frown, Qing Shui, do you believe in Yuan Si or me? Yuan Si's judgment may not be right, but we can't be too careful. Lu Qingxue said, are you sure that Kong Jichao is fine? Cheng Yuan snorted and sneered. That brat Yuan Si is really bad. In order to stop me from entering the Arcana territory, he really put in a lot of effort to stop the rise of the Great Dream Sect. He just had to frame Jichao and stop me from entering the Arcana territory. Lu Qingxue frowned. That can't be right. Cheng Yuan snorted, a little exasperated. Although he felt that the age difference between Chu Li and Lu Qingxue was huge, an entire generation apart, and it was impossible for them to be together, he could not help but be jealous, especially since Chu Li was handsome and had amazing martial arts skills, which made him seem inferior. He snorted angrily. Qing Shui, you're too naive. You think Yuan Si is too simple. If he's as sincere as you think, how could he take the divine demon her from my hands? Lu Qingxue shook her head and did not say anything. If Yuan Si was really a cunning person, he would not have given her so many spirit fruits for nothing. This was a great benefit without any pretense. Cheng Yuan became more and more anxious. He snorted and said, Qing Shui, Yuan Si has no feelings for you. He's just using you to deal with me and restrain me. Why don't you understand? Lu Qingxue waved her hand and said, all right, but you have to think carefully about entering the Arcana territory. Don't go in rashly. There's no harm in being careful. What if there's really something wrong with Kong Jichao? There's nothing wrong with Ji Chao, Cheng Yuan said coldly. Lu Qingxue rolled her eyes at him and said, that's good. I hope you won't regret it. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly disappeared without a trace in a flash. Sigh. Cheng Yuan stomped his foot heavily and let out a long sigh. His face was full of melancholy. A hero's spirit was short-lived for love. He just could not get past Lu Qingxue. His mind was affected by her. Ji Chao's betrayal? He could not help but shake his head and chuckle. However, as he laughed, his expression slowly became serious. Although Qing Shui believed Wu Yuanxi's words, she said those words to him out of good intentions. It was true that one must always be on guard against others. Thinking of this, he frowned and fell into deep thought. Chu Li returned to the sect and gave a few instructions to Sang, Qing Yun, and the others. He was going out for a while and was not to be called if there was nothing important. Everyone's current task was to work hard to improve their cultivation level and face the Tianfeng sect's attack in the future. Everyone knew that the Tianfeng sect would definitely come after him in the future. Moreover, being in the arcane realm, they might obtain more mystical fruits and improve their cultivation level. Therefore, everyone cultivated desperately, striving to digest the spirit fruits they had consumed as soon as possible before consuming them. Now, they did not lack spirit fruits. They only lacked the body and the ability to digest them. Seeing the mystical fruits in front of them, but not being able to eat them, was truly a kind of torture. It made them work even harder. Chu suddenly disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared in a small courtyard on Taihao Peak. He had already returned to his original appearance. Standing in front of the courtyard, he breathed in the air of Taihao Peak. It felt like a lifetime had passed. News of the Arcane Realm's opening had probably not reached here yet. Moreover, the Arcane Realm's danger was beyond imagination. If he wanted to enter, he would need to have a stronger cultivation level. Otherwise, if he could not pass the entrance, everything would be in vain. Fu Kaiwei opened the courtyard door in a red tunic and stood in the courtyard, looking at him. Chu smiled and fist saluted. Fu Kaiwei turned sideways, and he stepped into the courtyard. Fu Kaiwei came to the courtyard and sat down by the stone table. She said lightly, "Why do you have the time to look for me?" Chu smiled. "Senior Sister Fu, what are you talking about? Song Wuji is an isolated cultivation." Fu Kaiwei frowned. "It's impossible for him to come out in a short period of time. I heard that he had some enlightenment and will improve further. He might even become a great enlightened master." Her beautiful face was filled with worry. She was most worried that such a situation would happen. Once he became a great enlightened master, he would be truly invincible. What was worse was that he would ascend to the upper heaven. When that time came, she would not be able to find him even if she wanted to take revenge. She would not be able to die in peace. Chu took out a green fruit and handed it to her. "Eat it." "What is it?" Fu Kaiwei looked at it. It was the size of a fist and looked like a pear. However, it was emerald green, so it was probably not a pear. Chu said, "Eat it first." "All right." Fu Kaiwei opened her mouth and took a bite. She realized that it melted as soon as it entered her mouth. A clear stream of air entered her mouth and entered her stomach. Then it circled around her and disappeared into the depths of her mind. Chapter 2449. She carefully felt the changes in her body. There did not seem to be any changes. Her inner energy did not increase, and her body did not become stronger. It was not as magical as she had imagined. However, there seemed to be a slight change. Her body felt light and spirited. She felt better than before. The world in front of her had become more lovely. She wanted to howl at the sky to express her joy and emotions. Looking at everything in front of her, she felt inexplicably happy and touched. It was as if she had been reborn. She turned to look at Chu Li and hesitated. "It can't be increasing my lifespan, right?" As a disciple of Taihao Peak, she was knowledgeable. After experiencing this strange change, she quickly thought of all kinds of possibilities. In the end, she fell on the thing that she had been suppressing the most. Chu Li smiled and nodded. "Yes, lifespan." Fu Kaiwei stretched her body and felt the surging impulse. The corners of her eyes were already wet. She would only know how precious it was after losing it. She made the decision without hesitation. In order to kill Song Wuji, she was willing to give up everything. She really lost her lifespan and only had 10 years left to live. She woke up countless times at night and asked herself if it was worth it. Her initial determination gradually loosened. Looking at the lovely and wonderful world around her, 10 years was too short. She wished she could live for 10,000 years. Unfortunately, time could not be turned back. She could not make up for her initial decision. Her hand inadvertently swept past the corner of her eyes and quickly wiped away her tears. "I've tried the life extension pill before, but it didn't work. What is this? How can it have such a miraculous effect?" The dream of the blooming Sirius that she cultivated was too strange and overbearing. The lost lifespan could not be replenished. Even a life extension pill could not do anything. She could not feel anything when she consumed it, as it was swallowed by the dream of the blooming Sirius. She felt as if she was cursed. She only had 10 years of lifespan, and it was useless to struggle. However, this inconspicuous green fruit broke the curse and could actually replenish her lifespan. There was always a way. Chu Li looked at her graceful body and beautiful face. This was indeed the masterpiece of God Zhong Xiao. It was too cruel to live for only 10 years. The green fruit was really effective and made him happy. He chuckled and said, I don't know what this is either. I named it the green fruit because it can increase one's lifespan by 10 years. 10 years is already very good. Fu Kaiwei smiled sweetly. Her smile was bright and dazzling. Chu Li found it hard to open his eyes and look at her directly. Fu Kaiwei leaped lightly and performed a graceful dance in the air. She landed gracefully and silently like a falling flower. Even if it's only a year, it's still extremely rare. The closer they were to death, the more they felt the preciousness of life and lifespan. Chu Li smiled. Give me a moment. He disappeared from where he stood. Fu Kaiwei touched her face and felt that it must be flushed with excitement. Her full chest rose and fell violently several times. After taking a few deep breaths, she suppressed her overly excited thoughts and slowly calmed down. A moment later, Chu Li reappeared with a red sandalwood box in his hand. It was about a foot square and was engraved with intricate patterns. Under the sunlight, it shone with a luxurious aura. Chu Li placed the red sandalwood box on the table and opened it. Inside, there were 3 green fruits wrapped in a soft yellow cloth. The fruits looked as if they were carved out of jade. They complemented the red sandalwood box and the bright yellow cotton cloth, making them look even more dazzling. As soon as she saw the 3 green fruits, Fu Kaiwei's gradually calming thoughts became excited again. She raised her head and looked at Chu Li. It was already a great fortune to have one of these rare fruits. Now that he had taken out 4 of them, it was unimaginable. She was even a little afraid. Would such luck befall her? Chu Li raised his hand and smiled. Eat 4 first and see the effect. This. Fu Kaiwei hesitated. Chu Li said, 4 should be the limit. If not, you won't be able to bear it. It's still a burden on your body. Then I'll really eat them? Fu Kaiwei asked. She could not wait and want to swallow them all in one bite to avoid any complications. If someone stole one of these green fruits, she would really go crazy and would not be able to accept it. Chu Li smiled. Try it and see. It's really effective. There's more. Fu Kaiwei stared at the green fruits. Her eyes were shining. After hearing Chu Li's words, she did not care about being polite anymore. She reached out and took one. In the blink of an eye, she finished it. Then, she ate the second one and the third one. She ate all 3 green fruits in one go. Her body seemed to be glowing and gradually became illusory. She entered the illusory state of the epiphyllum's dream. She was faintly discernible, as if she could merge with the void at any time. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to observe her. When he saw her like this, he nodded in satisfaction. It seemed that the green fruits had not reached their limit. What was more amazing was that he faintly felt that these green fruits did not weaken because they had been consumed before. 1 fruit increased one's lifespan by 10 years, 2 would be 20 years, and 4 would be 40 years. Fu Kaiwei had indeed increased her lifespan by 40 years. Although this was only his vague intuition, it should not be wrong. Fu Kaiwei also had a clear feeling. After cultivating the epiphyllum's dream, she had a very clear sense of her lifespan. It was a kind of torture. She could clearly feel that with each passing day, her lifespan was reduced by 1 day. It was worse than being ignorant. At this moment, she felt a sudden increase in her lifespan. She was ecstatic and pounced on Chu Li. Chu Li shrunk and avoided her. Although Fu Kaiwei was in an illusory state and ignored the distance between them, Chu Li still managed to avoid her. She was surprised and sobered up. She suppressed the urge to hug him and sighed. Chu Li, I really don't know what to say. Chu Li smiled. Senior Sister Fu, you don't have to be so polite. You can only consume these green fruits now. I'll get more for you in the future. I can't let you die so easily. All right, my life is in your hands. Fu Kaiwei smiled brightly. Chu Li looked into her bright eyes and felt a sense of intoxication. He quickly reminded himself not to get emotional and smiled. Senior Sister Fu, I'm here to ask for your help. Speak. Fu Kaiwei returned to her original form and walked out of the illusory state. She became lively and sat in front of him. Her body exuded a faint fragrance. It was a fragrance that came naturally from her body. Chu Li said, I want to know where you and Sui Miaozhu obtained the heart-cleansing cauldron. You want to explore there? Fu Kaiwei asked. Do you think there's something we've missed? Chuli did not hide it and nodded. Fu Kaiwei poured a glass of wine and passed it to him. You should just give up. Chuli took the jade glass and took a sip. Why do you think so? After we obtained the heart cleansing cauldron and the spirit cultivation technique, the cave collapsed and disappeared completely. Fu Kaiwei took a sip of the wine, and her face instantly blushed. She had a peerless martial art and a strong body. She was still slightly tipsy after taking a sip because it was a secret spirit wine. Chuli had eaten a lot of spirit herbs and fruits, so the feeling was not as strong. He took another sip. There's no trace left? If that's the case, you're definitely not giving up. I'll bring you to have a look. Fu Kaiwei finished the jade glass in one gulp. Her face was instantly flushed, and her eyes were sparkling. Chapter 2450. Both of them appeared in front of a towering peak. Chuli looked around and looked at Fu Kaiwei, who was staring at the peak in front of her. Is this the foreign battlefield? Yes. Fu Kaiwei looked away and looked at Chuli. When I was fighting with Sui Miaozhu, there was a sudden loud noise coming from this peak. We stopped fighting and found the cave. Then we found the heart cleansing cauldron and the spirit cultivation technique. Chuli smiled. It seems that Sui Miaozhu's status was not high enough. She was already a revered lord at that time. Fu Kaiwei sighed softly. As a female Azura, she came to the foreign battlefield and killed many celestials. I was ordered by the Peak Master to kill her. You're brave. Chuli smiled. A revered lord is not an ordinary great Azura. I was fearless at that time as long as I could improve myself. Fu Kaiwei's eyes flashed with a sense of vicissitudes. She sighed. When I think about it, it suddenly feels so long ago. In fact, it was not long ago. Chuli asked, was it just a cave? There were a total of 3 caves. Fu Kaiwei pondered, 1 cave for living, 1 cave for cultivation, and 1 cave for reading. When we went there, only the cave for living was still intact. The other 2 caves were empty. All the weapons and books were crushed and turned into powder. Chuli looked at her doubtfully. Fu Kaiwei said, we speculated that it was not destroyed by an outsider, but by the owner of the cave himself. We also found his corpse. Chuli touched his chin and pondered. If that's the case, this person was vicious enough to destroy it rather than pass it on to the descendants. How did you get the heart-cleansing cauldron and the spirit cultivation technique? Since they were destroyed, he should not have left the heart-cleansing cauldron and the spirit cultivation technique. We speculated that he was possessed. After destroying the books and weapons at the last moment, he did not have the strength to destroy these 2 things. That's how we got them. It's a great luck. Fu Kaiwei sighed. If it wasn't for the heart-cleansing cauldron, I would have been possessed. She was too eager to take revenge, which was a big disadvantage for practicing the peerless mental cultivation method. Fortunately, she had the heart-cleansing cauldron, which kept her mind pure, and she would not get angry and impatient while practicing. Chuli sighed and said, Senior Sister Fu, you can't be too hasty when it comes to revenge. I've always wanted to kill Song Wuji, but I won't be as impatient as you are. I need to give myself enough time. So what if Song Wuji ascends? You've ascended as well. If you continue to chase after him, there will always be a chance to kill him. Fu Kaiwei rolled her eyes at him and said, Chuli, you're certain that you'll be able to catch up to him, but I'm different. My aptitude is far from his, and I'll only fall further and further behind. It's impossible for me to catch up. Chuli said, I dare not say that my aptitude is better than his. Fu Kaiwei laughed. That's true. It was true that Chuli's aptitude was far inferior to hers, but his comprehension was amazing. Moreover, he was extremely lucky. He had a fortuitous encounter and had the comprehension to cultivate. As a result, his cultivation level became stronger and stronger, far surpassing hers. He was almost on the verge of catching up to Song Wuji. Chuli said, Don't worry, Senior Sister Fu. Even if he really ascends, I'll chase him to the next level and kill him. All right. After experiencing life and death, Fu Kaiwei's stubbornness was not as strong as before. Moreover, she also saw hope in Chu Li. Chu Li's current cultivation level was unfathomable, and she could not sense it at all. They were on two completely different levels. Chu Li said, "After you took away the heart-cleansing cauldron and the cultivation of spirit, the cave collapsed?" Fu Kaiwei nodded slowly. There was an extremely strong formation in the cave. We were lucky that we broke in before the formation was activated. Then, when the formation was activated, we escaped in time. Chu Li stroked his chin. His admiration for the owner of the cave grew. There were not many people in the world who knew how to use formations, and there were not many who were so ruthless in their actions. This was the result of not being able to cultivate, so he buried himself in the ground, not wanting others to disturb his sleep. There's nothing in the cave. He destroyed everything. Only the heart-cleansing cauldron and the cultivation of spirit. Moreover, the cultivation of spirit isn't that powerful, and it has a huge flaw. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died from chi deviation. Fu Kaiwei shook her head gently and said, "So, don't hold too much hope. Even if you find it, it's useless." Chu Li said, "The cultivation of spirit is wonderful enough, but the cultivation requirements are extremely high." Fu Kaiwei snorted and rolled her eyes at him. "Who else in the world would dare to cultivate it except you? Sui Miaozhu has had it for so many years, but she only cultivated a few times." Chu Li smiled. The omniscient mirror had already observed the cave. Let's go in and have a look." He stepped forward. Fu Kaiwei followed him forward. "Can you find it even if it's trapped in the ground?" "It's not underground." Chu Li did not stop walking. The towering peak pierced through the clouds as they glided to the mountainside. Then, Chu Li extended his hand and pulled Fu Kaiwei up. The two of them stepped onto a precipice, and their vision suddenly blurred. They had appeared in a cave. "Huh." Fu Kaiwei looked at the cave. She had a photographic memory. When she saw the cave, she felt familiar. She had been here before. This was just a passage, not a real cave. They still needed to go inside. Chu Li smiled and said, "Is it here?" "How can it be?" Fu Kaiwei frowned and said in surprise, "I saw the cave collapse with my own eyes, and it disappeared. I didn't expect it to still be here." At this moment, she understood that she and Sui Miaozhu must have been hallucinating. It might even be caused by a formation. Chu Li said, "It's good that it's here. Let's go, we'll continue inside." As he spoke, he took out two jade talismans. They were the size of half a palm and were initially dull. As he channeled his energy into them, they gradually glowed as if they were filled with flowing water. Fu Kaiwei ignored his actions. Her bright eyes kept looking around to see if there was anything unusual. The cave was not damaged at all. No one else came in. Swoosh! Swoosh! With two soft whistles, the two jade talismans flew into the air and disappeared. Her eyes flashed again, and two cave entrances appeared. Fu Kaiwei's eyes widened. She only had one cave entrance in the beginning. How did it become two? Chu Li smiled and said, "Which one did you go?" "This one." Fu Kaiwei pointed to the left. There were still some traces left by the cave entrance. It was left by her and Sui Miaozhu when they fought. When they saw the cave, they thought it was a fortuitous encounter. They immediately fought each other, wanting to monopolize the fortuitous encounter. In the end, it was a tie. They had no choice but to compromise, and each of them took half of it. Chu Li said, "Then we'll go this way this time." He pointed to the cave on the right. Fu Kaiwei focused her senses for a moment, but it was all hazy. She could not sense anything. Chu Li smiled and said, "There's a formation here. Even if there's danger, you won't be able to sense it. Don't worry, just follow me." His omniscient mirror could already see this formation clearly. "Let's go," Fu Kaiwei said. The two entered the cave on the right. After walking for more than 20 meters, their eyes suddenly lit up. It was another larger cave. Stalactites hung upside down, forming a small pool below. Chapter 24:51. Fu Kaiwei was shocked. Could it be jade green? Chu Li shook his head. "You can't drink it, it's poisonous." He could feel the danger hidden in this dark green pool. Even if it was him, he would not have a good time drinking this water. Even if he did not die, he would lose a layer of skin. He sighed and said, "The owner of this cave is really vicious." Many people would be overjoyed when they encountered such a situation. They thought that they had encountered a miracle. It was rare spirit milk, but it was actually poisonous. Moreover, it emitted a faint fragrance. No one could reject it. Fu Kaiwei asked, did he purposely make it to harm people? He used a formation to twist it and form this poison. Chu Li said, "Let's go. We'll continue to walk in and avoid this." Fu Kaiwei did not refute and walked straight in. The two of them skimmed over the small green pond and walked inside. In a corner of the stone cave, they saw a bookshelf. It was empty, and there was a pile of powder next to it. It was moistened by the moisture. With one look, they knew that these books had been crushed. "See that? That's how vicious it is," Fu Kaiwei scoffed. Chu Li looked at the pile of powder and gently flicked it. A gust of wind from his finger swept towards the powder, showing the purity of his finger energy. It was a gentle force. Amidst the powder, an iron plate appeared on the ground. The iron plate was about the size of a palm. It was a combination of a semicircle and a square. There was a faint pattern on it. Fu Kaiwei was shocked. Her eyes widened as she looked at the iron plate. Chu Li waved his hand. The iron plate floated up and slowly floated in front of them. It hung in the air and rotated slowly, allowing them to take a closer look. There was a pattern on it. It seemed to be a sun and a moon. The moon and the moon coexisted, looking rather strange. Fu Kaiwei was about to reach out, but stopped. She took out a thin glove and put it on, but she could not notice its existence. Chu Li picked it up and passed it to her. Fu Kaiwei asked, did he leave it on purpose, or did he not notice it? Who knows? Chu Li smiled. Unless he comes back from the dead, no one will know. The pattern on it is a little strange. Fu Kaiwei examined it carefully and touched it a few times. There was no mechanism, and it was indeed a simple pattern. It could be a token of some sect, or it could be some kind of identity symbol, or it could be a key. It was almost impossible to guess the origin of this iron plate. She handed the metal tag back to Chu Li. It's very likely that it was hidden in these books. He was in a hurry to burn the books, so he didn't notice it. Chu Li nodded slowly. Through the observation of ashes, he knew that this iron plate was not at the bottom. There was a dent on it, but it was not deep, which meant that it was not thrown at the beginning, nor was it thrown at the end, but it was caught in the book. Did the owner of the cave know about the existence of this iron plate? This was probably a mystery. No matter how powerful he was, it was impossible for him to know everything. Since it's a poison pond, Fu Kaiwei said, then the books on this bookshelf are very important, and the iron plate is also very important. Chu Li nodded. Fu Kaiwei said, unfortunately, it was still destroyed. Chu Li was a little regretful. It's even more unfortunate that we can't find out the identity of this person. If they knew the origin, they could trace it back. Even if they could not find any clues here, they could still search through his identity. There would be a lot of clues. Unfortunately, it was burned completely, and there was not a single trace left. This person was very careful, and it would be difficult to find any flaws. Let's go and take a look over there, Chu Li said. But this bookshelf was left? Isn't it strange? Fu Kaiwei pointed to the antique bookshelf in the corner. Actually, after I left, when I thought about it, I was very upset that I left the bookshelf behind. Maybe there's something hidden in the bookshelf. Chu Li stared at the bookshelf and sighed. Fortunately, the bookshelf was not touched. You guys are really lucky. He could not help but sigh. Once the bookshelf was touched, even if the two women's martial arts were high, it would be difficult for them to escape unscathed. This bookshelf not only contained opportunities, but also formations. Once it was activated, it would be very troublesome. The two women's identities were not ordinary, and they had treasures on them. They should be able to escape, but the loss would not be small. They might even delay the opportunity and be trapped by the formation. At that time, they might not be able to escape. There's a mechanism on it? Fu Kaiwei asked. Chu Li said, mechanisms and formations are connected one after another. It's better not to touch it. Let's go. Since there's a chance, could it be hiding something more important? Fu Kaiwei said, something that he can't bear to destroy. Chu Li slowly said, That makes sense. His omniscient mirror had already seen through everything. There were no treasures, but he suddenly realized that the omniscient mirror was also tricked. This formation within a formation had already been activated, but he was not aware of it. This was specifically targeted at people with a strong spirit like him. Fukaiwei was not affected at all. This cave owner's method was really clever. It seemed like they were the same kind of people. Both of their souls were far stronger than ordinary people. Was it because of the cultivation of spirit, or was it because she was born like this? Could it be that there was a second person in the world who reincarnated like her? Possessing innate wisdom, not forgetting the past life. There were many monks in Buddhism who had innate wisdom, such as the 10 lifetimes of Buddhahood, and so on. They cultivated through life after life, but these innate wisdom were actually different from her own situation. The so-called innate wisdom was to remember what they had learned in their past life, but not everything could be remembered clearly. Many things were washed away. The power in the womb was strong. It was already commendable to remember the cultivation method. This was because the cultivation method was strong enough to resist the washing of the power in the womb. The requirements of the soul refining art were too high. It required an extremely powerful soul force and an extremely tyrannical spirit. Otherwise, one would die without a doubt. Did the owner of the cave create this soul refining art? Or did he cultivate this soul refining art? No matter which one it was very powerful, but in the end, he died from internal demons. If he created the cultivation of spirit, it was because the technique was not perfect. If he did not create the cultivation of spirit, it was because his spirit was not strong enough. No matter how he thought about it, cultivating the cultivation of spirit was extremely dangerous. However, in order to win against Song Wuji and enter the arcane realm, he could not care so much. He could only try. Are we going to dismantle it? Fukaiwei asked. Chu Li stretched out his palm like a knife and lightly chopped. A blade energy condensed in the void and slashed the wooden cabinet with a chi sound. Bang! Amidst the loud noise, a strong force surged and brought with it a cloud of white smoke. In the blink of an eye, it filled the entire cave. Chu Li and Fukaiwei were surrounded by an invisible force. The white smoke could not get close to them, but it lingered around them. Chu Li used telepathy and said in Fukaiwei's ear, "Watch where you step." Fukaiwei quickly leaped and stepped into the air. The ground sank slightly and then stopped. Chu Li sighed. This was a trump card. There were already more than 10 extremely sharp, treasured swords erected. If they were one step slower, they would have been pierced through their feet. To be able to make the treasured swords approach silently, it was not only because of the attraction of the formation, but also because of the ingenuity of the mechanism. The swords must contain a strange poison. They were silent, but the danger was concealed by the formation. Those who were trapped in the formation would lose their senses, and it would be difficult to avoid these swords. Go down, Chu Li said. Fukaiwei quickly landed on the ground. She was not afraid of these at all. She was just too lazy to use fleeting night blossoms because of this. Otherwise, she would not be hurt at all. Chu Li, on the other hand, carefully stared at these mechanisms and dodged them one by one. Chapter 2452. Chu Li let out a long sigh of relief. Although he felt that these traps were not that big of a deal and might not hurt him, he did not dare to take the risk because the person who set them up was not to be underestimated. Is it safe? Fukaiwei asked. Chu Li said, "You can see what's in the bookshelf." The book on the bookshelf was actually so precious and secretively hidden in the wooden cupboard. It must be something important. It was most likely a martial arts secret manual. Chu Li frowned and shook his head in disappointment. The omniscient mirror had already seen that the book was not a martial arts secret manual, but a travel note. Fukaiwei walked forward, confident that she was not afraid of poison because she had the treasured gloves. She picked up the book and flipped through it, shaking her head in disappointment as she passed it to Chu Li. Chu Li took it and flipped through it, his face solemn. "Why? Is there a problem?" Fukaiwei asked. Chu Li said, "This is serious." Fu Kaiwei tilted her head and looked at him. Then at the book, she scoffed. What's the big deal? Don't be so mysterious. Chu Li said, what's written here isn't about this world. The so-called travelogue isn't about this world. How do you know? Fu Kaiwei scoffed and thought about it, but still shook her head. She did not feel anything wrong, nor could she find any evidence that it was not about this world. Chu Li said, I only know that this is Juyi Peak. It's a peak on the upper level. Fu Kaiwei stared at him with her big bright eyes without blinking. Chu Li smiled. I've seen a martial arts study. It's the martial arts study of Juyi Peak, an antique study of the upper level. That's why I know this place. What martial arts? Fu Kaiwei asked. Chu Li said, feather flight technique. You haven't seen it before. I haven't heard of it either, Fu Kaiwei said. Chu Li said, it's a superior martial arts study, a martial arts study of the upper level. Fu Kaiwei picked up the book again and flipped through it. Finally finding the words Juyi Peak, she pondered, could it be that he wrote this on purpose? Chu Li said, then do you feel any familiarity with what's written here? Which part of it do you know? No. Fu Kaiwei shook her head and said, however, the world is so big. How can I see everything? It's impossible to go everywhere. It's possible that there are places I haven't been to. Chu Li said, these places are all very prosperous. Look at what's written here. There are only a few places in the Outland that are so prosperous and popular. Do any of them match? Fu Kaiwei wavered slightly. Could it really be a travelogue from the upper heaven? If so, it would explain why they hid it here. Moreover, she trusted Chu Li very much and trusted his judgment. Since he was so certain, she could not help but hesitate. Chu Li sighed. It seems like the owner of this cave has a powerful background. No wonder he destroyed all the books. Do you think he's from the first heaven? Fu Kaiwei said, I haven't heard of anyone who can come down from the upper heaven. They can only come down through the primordial spirit, using the deity descending technique. They can't come for more than 2 hours. Chu Li said, this might be an exception. There are always exceptions to everything. Then, did he come down from the upper heaven, or did his primordial spirit come from the upper heaven? Fu Kaiwei looked interested. How did he avoid the heavenly punishment? It was said that if the primordial spirit of the upper heaven exceeded 2 hours, the heavenly punishment would descend. There was no way to avoid it, and one soul would be destroyed. It was impossible for the body of the upper heaven to come down. There were no exceptions. Chu Li said, the secret behind this is incredible. Unfortunately, he's already dead. There's nothing we can do. Fu Kaiwei shook her head and sighed. What a pity. If you encountered this back then, you'd definitely be able to pry into the secret. Chu Li smiled. This is our own fate and fate. It can't be forced. I'm already lucky to be able to come here now, thanks to Senior Sister Fu. Fu Kaiwei rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. Tell me, how do we do it? Chu Li said, whether it's the primordial spirit or the body, it's very likely that he's from the upper heaven. Yes. Fu Kaiwei nodded. She did not believe it at first, but after Chu Li's encouragement, she became convinced. She really felt that the dead person was a person from the upper heaven and could be considered an enlightened master. Chu Li said, then why was he able to avoid the heavenly punishment and hide here? What does that have to do with anything? Fu Kaiwei frowned. You're thinking about his antique study, right? Not why he's able to hide here. Chu Li waved his hand. Senior Sister Fu, you're wrong. There might be a great secret here. If you can understand it, you'll have a better understanding of the mysteries of heaven and earth. You'll be one step closer to ascension. Senior Sister Fu, your goal now should change. Ow! Fu Kaiwei was stunned by his words. Chu Li said, your goal shouldn't be Song Wuji, but ascension. It looks like Song Wuji is going to ascend soon. If you're one step ahead of him, you'll have the upper hand when you reach the upper heaven. You'll have a chance to kill him. That makes sense. Fu Kaiwei thought about it and slowly nodded. However, ascension is something that can only be encountered by chance. Although Junior Sister, Xiao, seems to be able to ascend easily, there are only a few Taihao Peak disciples who manage to ascend. Chu Li smiled. Senior Sister Fu, can't you become one of those few? You? Fu Kaiwei poked him with her finger and scoffed. Then hurry up and tell me, what should we do? Chu Li shook his head. There's nothing we can do now. Let's continue reading. He carefully kept the scroll and gently pressed it against the wall. Boom! With a dull sound, another cave appeared. Fu Kaiwei glanced at the cave and said in surprise, "This is the place where we entered before. It's where that person's skeleton is." She pointed at the jade bed in the middle of the cave. A skeleton sat on the bed made of white jade. The skeleton was crystal clear like white jade, and it was indistinguishable from the jade bed. When it moved, it seemed to be glowing. Chu Li took a step back and felt an inexplicable pressure. Fu Kaiwei looked at him curiously. She did not feel anything. It was just a skeleton. Even if this person was ruthless and set up an opportunity, there would be no danger as long as they did not get close. Only when they got close would they trigger the mechanism. However, Chu Li was unusually wary. Chu Li pulled Fu Kaiwei and dashed out of the cave. He pulled Fu Kaiwei's sleeves out of the cave, and they appeared at the foot of the mountain in one breath. It was the place where they stopped to look. Fu Kaiwei was stunned by his words and looked at him in confusion. Chu Li took a deep breath. It's too dangerous there. It's better not to touch it. What's going on? Fu Kaiwei frowned. She felt like a fool and stared at Chu Li in dissatisfaction. Chu Li said, "There's something strange about the skeleton. It's just a skeleton. There might be a mechanism or something strange. Could it be poisonous?" Fu Kaiwei said, "Even if it's poisonous, it shouldn't be that scary, right?" Chu Li sighed. "It's much scarier than poison." Fu Kaiwei stared at him with her clear eyes, waiting for him to continue. Chu Li said, "His soul hasn't dispersed. It's still on the skeleton." "So what?" Fu Kaiwei scoffed. "It's just an ownerless soul." Chapter 2453. Is it really that scary? Fu Kaiwei asked. Chu Li nodded slowly. "It's more terrifying than I imagined, but he's in a strange state. It seems like he's in isolated cultivation, so we were able to escape safely. If he's awake, we'll be in danger." "Are we going to give up just like that?" Fu Kaiwei asked. Chu Li said, "Let's leave this place first before he catches up to us." As he spoke, he took out the scroll and the iron plate from his bosom. Looking at them under the bright sunlight, the iron plate was dull and as black as ink, while the scroll was suffused with a layer of strange luster. The material of the scroll was not ordinary. Fu Kaiwei asked, "Then can Peak Master handle it?" Since they were both god souls, the Peak Master should be able to use the god descent technique, so he should be able to deal with it. Chu Li said, "Are you telling us to let the Peak Leader waste 100 years of his life just to satisfy our curiosity?" "I think Peak Master is willing to give a try," Fu Kaiwei said. The Peak Lord would never let go of such a strange situation. Even if it cost him 100 years of his lifespan, he would still have to find out a thing or two. Furthermore, the Peak Lord did not value his lifespan at all, which was different from him. Chu Li waved his hand. "Let's not trouble the Peak Leader for now. It won't be too late for us to investigate in the future." "All right." Fu Kaiwei didn't insist. Bang! Suddenly, a blue light flashed in Chu Li's eyes, followed by a muffled sound that sounded like thunder exploding in his ears. Fu Kaiwei's vision went blank for a moment before she regained her senses. She saw that Chu Li's blue eyes were flickering nonstop. His body was motionless, but his white robe was fluttering even though there was no wind. His face was solemn. Fu Kaiwei immediately understood that he had encountered an invisible enemy, which was most likely the enlightened master's soul. She took out a jade tag from her inner pocket and tossed it to Chu Li. "This is the soul protection jade." Bang! The jade tablet exploded into a cloud of white dust in the air. "Senior Sister Fu, you should go back first," Chu Li shouted. He shook the iron tag and the scroll in his hand, and his body became illusory. Chi 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 chi. An invisible force whistled through the air. His figure swayed, and in the end, it turned into fragments, but he had already disappeared. Bang! Fu Kaiwei's vision suddenly turned black, and she directly fell into darkness. When she woke up, she discovered that she was lying on her own bed. The faint fragrance around her was her body fragrance. It was incomparably familiar. The bright moonlight shone on the paper window, illuminating the room. Chu Li was sitting on the low couch opposite the bed. He sat in a lotus position with a solemn expression, as if he was meditating. As soon as she moved, Chu Li opened his eyes. His eyes lit up the entire house. "Is senior sister Fu feeling better?" Chu Li asked. Fu Kaiwei said, "I was attacked by him, right?" Chu Li said, "Fortunately, senior sister Fu has the soul defense jade and my protective talisman. Only the soul protector jade was unable to block that spiritual attack, and his protective talisman was able to block it. Even so, she instantly fainted, unable to resist at all. This was the power of that soul. How did you defeat him?" Fu Kaiwei looked at him curiously. Chu Li smiled bitterly. "I didn't defeat him. I just escaped." "Did he let you escape?" Fu Kaiwei scoffed. The soul would not be able to catch up to them unless they abandoned the iron plate and the scroll. Otherwise, the soul would definitely be able to find them. At this time, they were safe and sound, so they must have defeated the soul. Chu Li said, "I had a flash of inspiration, so I used the heavenly spirit scripture. Back then, he fought an extremely intense battle with the soul. He used all his strength in every attack. If it was not for the Buddhas and heavenly demons in the void of his mind, he would not have been able to withstand the soul's attack. With their protection in his mind, in addition to the flash of inspiration, he used the heavenly spirit scripture and injured the soul, temporarily forcing it to retreat. That alone was not enough to make the soul afraid. What it really feared was the existence of the 9 cauldrons heaven suppression. He retreated as he fought, and unknowingly entered the range of the 9 cauldrons heaven suppression formed by the chakra pagoda. He immediately sensed a strange force, and when he controlled this force, he was able to suppress the soul. Unfortunately, the soul was strong enough to escape at the crucial moment. Once they were out of the range of the 9 cauldrons heaven suppression, Chu Li could not do anything to it. Moreover, Fu Kaiwei was already unconscious, so he dared not be careless and brought her back to Taihao Peak. As for tracking down the soul, suppressing it, and then asking for details to understand its mysteries, it could only be a thought. Looking at the soul's ruthless and decisive methods, it was probably impossible. Fu Kaiwei sighed. "I'm the one who dragged you into this." She could not withstand a single blow, so she could not help at all. Chu Li smiled. "Senior sister Fu, don't say such things. If you didn't lead the way, how would I have found the iron plate and a travelogue? This is already a great discovery. What's the use of it?" Fu Kaiwei scoffed. As for what the iron plate was used for, it was impossible to guess blindly. As for the travel notes, although they looked mysterious at first glance, they didn't have much use after thinking about it carefully. It might be useful for those who were about to ascend, but for them, it was far away and not helpful in improving their strength. Chu Li said, "I think there's something strange about the iron plate. If we study it carefully, we might be able to find something. Since there's nowhere to start, let's not waste time on it. If we have the time, we might as well cultivate the spirit cultivation technique." Fu Kaiwei disagreed. Chu Li smiled. "My instincts have always been accurate. If I can find some clues, then it's highly possible. Then I'll wait for your good news." Fu Kaiwei rolled her eyes. "Could it really help with ascension?" Chu Li said, "Senior sister Fu, you should study the travelogue. It might contain some secrets. Understanding the upper heaven will help you understand the martial arts of the upper heaven." "That's true." Fu Kaiwei was startled and slowly nodded. She realized that Chu Li was right. The more one understood the upper heaven, the deeper one's understanding of the upper heaven's martial arts. This was inevitable. Chu Li smiled. "Senior sister Fu, you study the travelogue and I'll study the iron plate. Suit yourself." Fu Kaiwei said, "I heard that junior sister's son is in trouble again." Chu Li's expression changed. Fu Kaiwei smiled. "Don't worry, it's not a big deal." Chu Li listened attentively. Fu Kaiwei said, "It's a grudge between great light, surpassing realm, and 2 sections." Chu Li continued to stare at her. Fu Kaiwei said helplessly, "A disciple from Gale Palace and Lac Palace fell in love with a Great Light Surpassing Realm disciple at the same time and personally asked Great Light Surpassing Realm for help." Chu Li said, Then let the great light, surpassing realm, disciple choose. But that disciple doesn't like either, Fu Kaiwei said, so he offended both Gale Palace and Lac Palace. Chu Li scoffed. So be it. Fu Kaiwei shook her head. Although great light surpassing realm has always been aloof, its status can exceed that of the 9 divisions. In the end, Gale Palace and Lac Palace joined forces to pressure great light surpassing realm to hand over that disciple. Chu Li laughed. How interesting. Fu Kaiwei said seriously, their decision is for 2 disciples to compete in martial arts, and the winner will get the great light surpassing realm disciple. Chu Li's face darkened, and he sneered. Are they going to force the marriage? Yes. Fu Kaiwei nodded. Chu Li tilted his head and looked at her. Chapter 2454. Chu Li sneered and said, they really are quite bold. He was now famous and was no longer the Chu Li of the past. Almost everyone knew about his relationship with Sun Mingwe. They knew that he was the backer of great light surpassing realm, but they still dared to do this. It can only be said that they did not respect him. Or rather, they did it on purpose. Fu Kaiwei said, it looks serious, but it's just a matter of wrangling. The 2 divisions don't dare to fight great light surpassing realm, so they can only pressure each other and see who gives up first. Chu Li said coldly, why bother? Wouldn't it be better to settle it cleanly? How can it be so easy? Fu Kaiwei shook her head. This is how things are between sections. A small matter will involve many people and spread to the sects, forming a conflict between sections. Chu Li nodded. He naturally knew this, but he was still dissatisfied with Great Wind Palace and Like Palace for daring to trouble Sun Mingwe. Fu Kaiwei said, if there's really something, Junior Sister Sun would have told you. She didn't tell you now, which means she can handle it. You don't have to interfere, lest people say that she's a puppet. Chu Li did not say anything. Fu Kaiwei scoffed. This matter is a mess. We've been forced into a corner. Great light surpassing realm can't compromise, and neither can the 2 divisions. Otherwise, we'll lose our dignity and deterrence. It'll be very disadvantageous. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. The 9 divisions have their own deterrence. No matter what they do, other sects won't dare to offend them. What other proof do you need? The 9 divisions are different, and their deterrence is also different. Fu Kaiwei said, they're also fighting openly and secretly. They can't afford to relax. Rain Master Palace is an example. Even with someone like you, Rain Master Palace hasn't improved and is still at the bottom of the 9 divisions. Chu Li asked, what about Xue Liu? He had always remembered Xue Liu's favor and never had the chance to return it. Although she has good comprehension, talent, and ambition, unfortunately, she's not lucky enough, Fu Kaiwei said. She always lacks the most important bit of luck, so she can't shine. Chu Li nodded slowly. It was true. Xue Liu had both beauty, aptitude, and comprehension. Logically speaking, she should have been famous a long time ago. However, because she was the daughter of the master of the Rainmaster Hall, she was suppressed by others and couldn't be famous. She also lacked enough luck. Otherwise, she would have entered the Great Sky Peak long ago. Fu Kaiwei said, in my opinion, you'd better not get involved. This matter is quite troublesome. Chu Li smiled. Thank you for your advice, Senior Sister Fu. Fu Kaiwei heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that he had calmed down. She was most afraid that Chu Li would make a move in a moment of excitement. He would go to the Vacant Palace and the Windstorm Palace to capture the 2 disciples and get rid of them, ending all troubles once and for all. It was a clean and efficient way of doing things, which was in line with his style of doing things. However, if he did that, it would be like poking a hornet's nest. If he did that, then all the disciples of the sects would be in danger, and no one would be able to control him. He would become the public enemy of all the sects, and it would be difficult for him to do anything. Although Song Wuji's martial arts was strong, as the master of the Thunder Pool, his actions were not as free and easy as he appeared to be. He usually did not make a move, and even if he did, it would be the disciples of the Thunder Pool. As the master of the Thunder Pool, he rarely made a move himself. He would only make a move on the truly top-notch masters. It was fine if he did not make a move, but when he did, it would be earth-shattering. This was how Song Wooji became famous. Chu Li's martial arts had now reached Song Wooji's level. The only thing he lacked was his reputation. As long as his reputation reached a certain level, no one would dare to offend him. However, the premise was that he could not act recklessly. Otherwise, not only would it be difficult to build his reputation, but he would also attract isolation and hostility. At this point, he had to be even more cautious. Chu Li smiled. Senior Sister Fu, don't worry. I'm not a young man who will act recklessly. I'll go see Mingyu first. Go. Fu Kaiwei looked at him deeply. The next moment, Chu Li appeared in his own courtyard in the Great Light Surpassing State. He had a separate courtyard in the Great Light Surpassing State. It was not far from Sun Mingyue's courtyard, but they were not adjacent. As soon as he appeared, Sun Mingyue quickly sensed him and appeared in front of him. Her white robe fluttered in the wind, and a delicate fragrance wafted in the air. The familiar fragrance calmed Chu Li down as he looked at Sun Mingyue with a smile. Sun Mingyue smiled sweetly. You're finally back. I thought you were addicted to being the sect leader. Chu Li smiled. I heard that you've encountered some trouble. The two were considered an old married couple. When they met, they only smiled at each other. There was no physical contact. Sun Mingyue scoffed and stopped smiling. It's a small matter. It's not worth mentioning. Chu Li said, let me handle it. How do you want to do it? Sun Mingyue asked. Chu Li smiled. Simple. I'll use brute force to defeat 10 people. Are you going to capture them directly? Sun Mingyue frowned slightly and shook her head as she laughed. Isn't that too simple and crude? Sometimes simple and crude is more effective, Chu Li said. He knew that the best way was to drag things out and finally turn a big problem into a small one. However, at this stage, he decided to go with his heart and no longer be restrained. Otherwise, what was the point of cultivating so hard? In the end, he could not do as he pleased and be free. He might as well not cultivate at all. Sun Mingyue said, I originally wanted to grind with them to see who could outlast the other. They were also worried about you and did not dare to make the first move. Yet they insisted on suppressing us. Chu Li said, Isn't that ridiculous? Sun Mingyue shook her head. It's the two disciples' doing. It's too late for the two sects to know about it. They could only bite the bullet and suppress us. The two sects want to join forces to suppress us and maintain their prestige. Chu Li said, What are you going to do? You're from the Rainmaster Palace. If you build a relationship with them, everything will be simple, Sun Mingyue said. Once they join forces with the Rainmaster Palace, the alliance between the Windstorm Palace and the Lac Palace would not be a threat. Their momentum would not be weaker than theirs, and they would be even more fearful. In the end, the matter would end without a conclusion. Chu Li smiled. That's the right way. Things between sects are like this. They ally with each other and use each other. Sun Mingyue shook her head. It's very boring. You should go do what you need to do. After Song Wooji comes out of isolated cultivation, I don't know how powerful he will be. Chu Li said, Let's settle this first. As soon as he finished speaking, he wiped his face with his hand and changed his face into Zhao Day's. Sun Mingyue rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. This stupid look again. Chu Li smiled. Were there portraits? Wait a moment. Sun Mingyue entered his house and quickly drew 2 paintings. She passed them to Chu Li. Chu Li glanced at them and nodded. He disappeared and took the 2 paintings with him. After a while, when he reappeared, the paintings in his hands had disappeared. Sun Mingyue scoffed. Is it settled? Chu Li said, This time, I've taught them a lesson and crippled their martial arts. Sigh. Sun Mingyue said helplessly, Let's leave it at that for now. I'm just afraid that they're not afraid of death and will come back to take revenge and cripple the surpassing state disciples. Chu Li smiled. That's for the best. Let's see who's more crippled. Sun Mingyue scoffed. In the end, both sides will suffer. Why bother? I hope they know what's good for them this time. Chu Li smiled and entered the house. He took out the iron tag and looked at it under the sunlight. Sun Mingyue reached out and grabbed it. She asked in surprise, Where did this come from? You recognize this? Chu Li was stunned. Chapter 2455. Sun Mingwa looked at it carefully and nodded slowly. This looks like a royal warrant. Chuli became spirited and his eyes lit up. He felt that this was not an ordinary item, especially the strange pattern on it. He tried to visualize it, but there was a faint layer of protection and he could not visualize it, just like when he visualized the withering tree. This made him even more certain that this item was extraordinary, and he tried even harder to visualize it. Unfortunately, he failed every time, and as he failed, his spirit was injured as if he was fighting with someone. He could only be careful and not act recklessly. He knew that he could not succeed by force and needed a unique technique. Sun Mingwa asked, "How did you get this item?" Chuli then told her everything. He trusted Sun Mingwa completely and did not hide anything. The arcane realm. Sun Mingwa frowned and sighed. I didn't expect the heavenly demonic realm to change so much. The Grandmaster realm is in trouble now. I'm afraid the world will be in chaos in the future. Chuli nodded. Once the heavenly demonic realm was unified, they would have to wage war against the Grandmaster realm in order to maintain their long-term rule. They had to divert their internal conflicts and focus, or else it would cause internal strife sooner or later, and the unification would not be maintained. With the support of the arcane realm, the Grandmaster realm was no match for them. Sun Mingwa looked at Chuli. What do you want to do? I'll see if I can unify the heavenly demonic realm, Chuli said. Sun Mingwa's solemn expression disappeared, and she pursed her lips into a smile. You're so greedy. Previously, you only wanted to be a sect leader, and it was already out of your reach. I didn't expect you to actually become a realm leader. Chuli said, it can't be helped. If they really unify the heavenly demonic realm, the world will be in chaos. So be it, Sun Mingwa said. It's time for chaos, or else it'll be too boring. Chuli glared at her angrily. Compared to his soft-hearted nature, Sun Mingwa was more suitable to be a sect leader. She did not value human life so much and was more calm. Sun Mingwa said, without chaos, it'll be difficult to overthrow the current 9 divisions. Chuli raised his eyebrows. You want to improve the great light surpassing state? Sun Mingwa nodded. Being oppressed by the 9 tribes is indeed too frustrating. As the realm master, I'm not happy either. Instead, why can't I overthrow them and stand on top of their heads? That's no laughing matter. Chuli furrowed his brows. The key is still the strength of the sect's disciples. They have the best martial arts and disciples with the best qualifications. How can we suppress them? The Great Light Scripture needs to be comprehended in the midst of life and death. Sun Mingwa said, the more chaotic the situation, the more one can increase their strength. It's a pity that Great Light's surpassing state disciples can't enter the extraterritorial battlefield at will. Chuli pondered and said, the first step is to smooth things over and let the Great Light's surpassing state disciples enter the foreign battlefield. It'll be difficult. Sun Mingwa shook her head. The 9 divisions will worry about what will happen to the other sects if they make an exception. They said that they were afraid of losing too many Celestials and that the extraterrestrial battlefield was too dangerous. In fact, they were hypocritical and selfish. Chuli smiled. Back then, the 9 divisions had such a rule in consideration of the lives of the heavenly beings. After all, the Azuras were too powerful. However, over the years, this rule has gradually changed. Sun Mingwa scoffed. Now, it has become the foundation of their strength. Chuli said, how many masters did the 9 divisions sacrifice in order to forge this foundation? Moreover, the 9 divisions have sacrificed a lot now. Take the Rainmaster Hall, for example. If it didn't suffer heavy losses, how could they be so weak? Losses are losses, but strengthening is strengthening. Sun Mingwa said, at least give the other sects a chance to choose. Not like now, where they are completely controlled by them. Chuli nodded. Then think of a way to break this rule. Unless we can persuade the Elders Guild. Sun Mingwa scoffed. I'll try to bring it up in the next meeting. Chuli said, the elders of the Elders Guild are held by the sect leaders. He had been investigating and wanted to know who was in the Elders Guild. Unfortunately, there had been no progress. The members of the Elders Guild were extremely complicated and secretive. He could not find them no matter how hard he tried. What was more difficult was that they did not recognize each other. When they met, they would wear custom-made masks and black robes. When they put on the masks, their voices would also change, so even acquaintances could not recognize each other. They all knew that the sect leader was also a member of the Elders Guild. However, during the Elders Guild meeting, they could not recognize each other. This made them wonder if the sect leader could enter the Elders Guild. It's not just the sect leader. There are also some top-notch masters. Sun Mingwei said, "Didn't you receive an invitation?" Chu Li slowly shook his head. Sun Mingwei said, "That shouldn't be the case." Chu Li asked, "How do I recruit new elders?" "There are a total of 100 people in the Elders Guild. You need 90 people to agree to join," Sun Mingwei said, "but no one has suggested you join the Elders Guild. Something is wrong." Chu Li said, "Maybe it's because of my identity." Sun Mingwei sighed and slowly nodded. Enlightened masters who ascended from the lower realm were not discriminated against in the Outland. It was obvious from her and Shao Qi's encounter. Shao Qi had even become the boundary master of great light surpassing state. However, Chu Li was different. His ascension method was different from the other enlightened masters. It was similar to Song Wuji's ascension method. Song Wuji's appearance was already a taboo in the Elders Guild. Looking at Chu Li's current position, he had improved by leaps and bounds. He had far surpassed his peers and was almost unrivaled under Song Wuji. They were deliberately suppressing Chu Li so that he would not be unable to escape. Chu Li said, "It doesn't matter now." Back then, he wanted to join the Elders Guild because he wanted them to change the way they treated the lower realm and stop letting Azuras into the lower realm. Now that Lu Yurong had become the Divine Lady, she could directly order Azuras, which was much more effective than the Elders Guild. Since he had no other request, he could not be bothered with the Elders Guild. Sun Mingwei nodded. Now that he had a superior status, the Elders Guild could not control him. If he joined the Elders Guild, he would be looking for trouble and suffering. It would be better if he did not join them. Chu Li said, back to the topic at hand. "What's the origin of the Heaven Inspecting Certificate?" "I've only heard of it occasionally." Sun Mingwei thought for a while and said, "When the previous realm leader passed on the secret to me, he mentioned it occasionally. He said that the Heaven Inspecting Certificate is a divine item that fell from the sky." Chu Li asked, "Did it fall from the upper heaven?" "No." Sun Mingwei shook her head slowly. "Although the treasures that fall from the upper heaven are rare, they can't be called divine items. This Heaven Inspecting Certificate is said to have fallen from the 33 heavens." Chu Li touched his chin and pondered. Then he smiled. "The 33 heavens is out of reach. Even if it's said to be from the 33 heavens, who can prove it?" "That's right," Sun Mingwei said. "That's why many people think that it fell from the upper heaven." Chu Li nodded slowly. Sun Mingwei said, "But this is a divine item, and at the same time, an inauspicious item." Without waiting for Chu Li to ask again, she said, "Those who have received the Heaven Inspecting Certificate will all die a violent death." Chu Li thought of the previous owner and smiled. "So what's the use of this Heaven Inspecting Certificate that it's called a divine item?" Chapter 2456. Highly recommended. Spiritual wander? Chu Li was startled. He suddenly realized that everything he had guessed was the opposite. The owner of the cave was not an enlightened master from a higher level, but someone from this level. However, he obtained the sky inspecting document, so he was able to spiritual wander up to the first level. He never thought that there would be such a treasure that could allow him to spiritual wander up to the heavens. His life and death scripture was marvelous. It was already beyond his imagination to be able to absorb the spiritual chi of the upper heaven. Directly going to the upper heaven was something he had never thought of. The world was really full of wonders, and he should not underestimate the people of the world. Sun Mingwei smiled. "Isn't it amazing? When Master Senior Su told me about it, I thought it was amazing too, so I remembered it immediately and asked what the sky inspecting document looked like." Chu Li asked, How did Realm Leader soon know what the sky inspecting document looked like? Sun Mingwei answered. She had a good friend who obtained the sky inspecting document. Looks like it's that person. Chu Li sighed. Sun Mingwei's expression was solemn. But this document is also an inauspicious item. It was said that after this friend obtained it, his temperament changed drastically and he became obsessed with cultivation. He even had the risk of going astray. Fortunately, he had a treasure called the heart-cleansing cauldron to suppress it. Otherwise, he would have gone astray and died. Chu Li was even more certain that it was that person. Sun Mingwei said, more importantly, the inheritance on the document is of little value. One needs to be gifted in order to cultivate it. It's very difficult to get started. Even after getting started, there are many dangers and one's soul will be destroyed if one is not careful. Chu Li nodded emotionally. Spiritual wonder. Presumably, the owner of the cave could go up to the first level, but did not have the ability to go up to the next level and see a higher level. It was because his spiritual energy was not strong enough and his soul energy was not strong enough. If he did not have the Chakram Pagoda, if he wanted to strengthen his soul, he would have to do it step by step, even with the spirit cultivation technique. It required a lot of patience, and progress was slow, which was much harder than cultivating inner energy. Sun Mingwei said, ever since that friend obtained the sky inspecting document, he cut off all contact and became obsessed with cultivation. He gradually drifted away and hasn't contacted masters seniorly for a long time. I think he's dead. Chu Li said, he's really dead. That's why you got this. Sun Mingwei had already guessed it. She sighed and said, this is an inauspicious thing. It's better to stay away from it. Chu Li chuckled. The so-called bad luck is because you can't control yourself. You're so engrossed in your spiritual journey that you've forgotten about the world. Your mind has already left this world, and you're getting more and more intoxicated. Eventually, you'll live in solitude until your soul is exhausted and you die. Sun Mingwei sighed. It's good that you know. Otherwise, you should just throw it away. You think I can't control myself? Chu Li was a little unconvinced. Sun Mingwei said, you also want to enter First Heaven and learn more to improve your understanding of martial arts. This is your weakness, so you can't reject the sky inspecting credential. Chu Li smiled and pointed at the sky inspecting archive. All right, take it with you. Aren't you afraid that I'll lose myself in it? Sun Mingwei smiled sweetly. Chu Li said, if you want to go astray, let's do it together. Don't mess around on your own, or your life will be in danger. Sun Mingwei waved her hand and said, forget it. She tossed the sky inspecting archive to Chu Li. Shao Qi was in First Heaven. If Chu Li wanted to go astray, he would have to meet Shao Qi. What was she doing by his side? Both of them would feel uncomfortable. Moreover, she believed in Chu Li's self-control. Without it, he would not have achieved what he had today. Chu Li smiled and said, did Realm Leader Su say how to activate this sky inspecting archive? It seems easy. Sun Mingwei pondered for a moment and said, I think it's by dripping blood and visualizing the pattern on the archive. Naturally, you'll receive its inheritance, but you'll need to have a strong enough spirit or else you'll be heavily injured. Chu Li suddenly realized that he was missing the step of dripping blood. Sun Mingwei said, if the previous owner of the sky inspecting archive died less than 100 years ago, it'll be very difficult to receive its inheritance. If the owner is still alive, it'll be even more difficult. You'll need to defeat the spirit of the previous owner. Chu Li slowly nodded. No wonder he had never been able to enter the right door. He was just a little short. If the owner is dead, will his soul not be destroyed? Chu Li asked. Sun Mingwei was stunned and smiled. How can there be such a thing? Chu Li looked at her with a straight face. Sun Mingwei was surprised. He's not dead, Chu Li said. His corpse is still there, but his soul hasn't been destroyed. Then I'll have to trouble you. Sun Mingwei said, Master Senior Su didn't mention this. It seems that there's another mystery about this sky inspecting archive. If the soul is not destroyed, will he have to kill you to take back the sky inspecting archive? Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingwei hesitated for a moment. She remembered that the person was Master Senior Su's friend, but they were still quite a distance away. She sighed and said, then you should release him from purgatory. Aren't you a Buddhist? It won't be difficult for you. Chu said, his soul is very strong. I can't release him from purgatory. The scripture of the Earth Matrix and reincarnation scripture contained the method of releasing souls from purgatory, but it was useless against the soul. It did not seem to be released from purgatory at all. Instead, it became more excited and its strength increased. Only the wheel of reincarnation pagoda was effective. Sun Mingwe asked, "What do you plan to do then?" "Ignore him for now," Chu said. "As long as I receive the inheritance, he won't be the owner of the sky inspecting archive. If it was not the owner, it would not be able to sense it and chase after it. Moreover, the Nine Cauldrons heaven-suppressing archive was still around, so would not dare to come close." "That's for the best," Sun Mingwe said. "After all, he was Master Senior Su Xiangyi's friend, so it would be best not to kill him." Chu sat in his house, with Sun Mingwe sitting opposite him. She was watching him quietly and protecting him. He cut his index finger and placed it on the sky inspecting archive. There was nothing unusual on the sky inspecting archive. Chu frowned as he looked at the sky inspecting archive and then at Sun Mingwe. Sun Mingwe remained calm. Chu closed his eyes and began to think about the picture on the sky inspecting archive. The sun and the moon were both there, and there were some rough curves that formed a simple picture. He needed to add more details. He slowly added them in his mind, and they became clearer and more realistic. Boom! There was a loud sound. It was as if a round ball had appeared in the void. It was surrounded by raging flames and emitted a dazzling light. It was like a meteor that was crashing toward him at high speed. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of him. Bang! Chu did not even have time to dodge. There was a vast expanse of whiteness in front of him, followed by the chanting of Buddhas and heavenly demons. It was as if it came from afar. It was faintly discernible, but it was clearly transmitted to the bottom of his heart. Chu gradually regained his consciousness and realized that a metal plate had appeared in the void of his mind. It was the size of a large round mirror, and it floated in the air. It was completely black and different from a large round mirror. Chu did not have to look closely to know that this was the sky inspecting archive. It was the soul of the sky inspecting archive. There were words flowing on its dark body. It was the spirit refinement technique that he cultivated. In an instant, his understanding of the spirit refinement technique deepened by a large margin. It was as if he had cultivated for 100 years. Therefore, the spirit refinement technique circulated smoothly and quickly. In the blink of an eye, his soul felt full, and it was comparable to cultivating for a day. This was the true wonder of the spirit refinement technique. He had gained a lot. Chapter 2457. He closed his eyes again and visualized again. Suddenly, a meteor flew towards him and crashed into him. His soul felt like it was about to be shattered and flew out of his body. Chu saw it more clearly this time. He watched the meteor crash into him and endured it. He immediately felt the energy rushing towards him. This energy was extremely strange. It was not spiritual energy, nor was it inner energy, nor was it spiritual energy. Instead, it was an extremely strange energy that made him feel refreshed. After absorbing this energy, he felt like he was countless times stronger. It was as if he could punch a hole in the sky, and nothing in the world could stop him. He immediately knew that it was an illusion. There was no such thing in the world. After a moment of silence, he knew that his soul power had strengthened once again, and he couldn't help but smile. This inheritance was actually so powerful. Although the soul-refining art increased his soul power extremely quickly, compared to this inheritance, it seemed to be a gradual process. He visualized again. This time, the meteor was bigger, faster, and fiercer. His soul suddenly loosened and was about to be shaken out of his body. While he was shocked, he guarded his mind and soul. He suddenly understood that there was no such thing in the world. This technique was a temporary technique, but it was more dangerous. More importantly, every time he used it, the next time would be more dangerous. If he did not have many strange skills, and the many Buddhas and heavenly demons in his mind, he might not have been able to withstand 2 impacts. Those who were greedy would have lost their lives. He slowly opened his eyes, and the dark room was suddenly lit up. Sun Mingwe asked, "How is it?" Chu Li caressed the imperial decree and sighed. "It's a divine item indeed. It's really magical." "What's so special about it?" Sun Mingwe asked curiously. Chu Li said, "Try it." He reached out and held Sun Mingwe's hand. It was cool and soft like a piece of nephrite. The delicate feeling went straight to his heart, and he immediately recalled his previous experience. Their hearts were connected, and their supreme diamond scripture was connected. Therefore, as long as he opened his mind, she could see it clearly. Sun Mingwe felt like she had experienced it herself. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at him in surprise. "Nothing else?" Chu Li smiled. "This is already amazing." "That's true," Sun Mingwe said. "Luckily, you have a strong will. Otherwise, you would have lost your life." This sky-inspecting ultimatum. She took back her ominous words and solemnly said, "You must not be greedy. It is the grave of the greedy." "Indeed," Chu Li said, "that visualization method to strengthen the soul is the biggest trap. I don't know how many people have died because of it. You can't blame others for your own death. You have to be careful. Don't be careless just because you have many secret techniques," Sun Mingwe said. Chu Li smiled and nodded. "You really don't want to see the situation on the first heaven?" "There's no need for that," Sun Mingwe said. She stood up and walked out. "You continue your cultivation. I still have things to do." "The people from Windstorm Palace and Lac Palace are here," Chu Li said. "Back then, they made their move in front of their fellow disciples, so they won't be able to hide it." "Yes," Sun Mingwe said. "He came over to interrogate me in a threatening manner." Chu Li could not help but laugh. "They sure have guts. They're confident that you won't dare to act recklessly." Sun Mingwe shook her head and sighed. "They've already made their move, but they're still so confident. I really don't know what they're thinking. Confidence that they've cultivated over the years." Chu Li said, "They think that I can only deal with 1 or 2 people at most. I don't dare to deal with the entire Windstorm Palace and Lac Palace." "Really?" Sun Mingwe laughed coldly. "They're relentless. I'm avoiding them, but that guy from Windstorm Palace wants to commit suicide." Chu Li laughed. "Commit suicide?" Sun Mingwe scoffed. "If we don't give him an explanation, he'll die in our great light surpassing state." "This is a threat." Chu Li frowned. "What explanation?" "They want us to admit that we're the ones who crippled them." Sun Mingwe scoffed. "They're trying to catch us off guard." "What are they trying to do? Start a war?" Chu Li's expression was solemn. He said in a low voice, "Don't be careless. They might really want to start a war." "What about you?" Sun Mingwe smiled. "Are they really not afraid of you? What if they have a countermeasure?" Chu Li said, "I'm not invincible." "All right, I'll be careful. I won't let them catch us off guard." Sun Mingwe nodded slowly and put away her laziness. Chu Li sat on the bed and used the omniscient mirror to observe. He saw 2 middle-aged men in a basilica. They looked righteous and were drinking tea with their heads lowered. They did not speak to each other. Chu Li directly saw through their minds. These 2 men were good friends and had a tacit understanding of each other. They were prepared to work together to force great light surpassing state to reveal a flaw, which would give them an opportunity to attack. The 2 departments had indeed received instructions from their superiors to look for a flaw and provide an opportunity to attack. As for Chu Li, there would naturally be people who would specifically deal with him to overwhelm him. Chu Li remained silent. There really were people who wanted to deal with him. It seemed like they were dealing with great light surpassing state, but in fact, they were preparing to deal with him. These 2 sects were really bold. Were they really sure that he would not dare to attack them? Or were they sure that there were masters who could deal with him? Could be Fu Kai Wei. A moment later, a young lady in white entered the basilica and gave a fist salute. "Heroes, I'm really sorry. The realm master has gone into isolated cultivation." "He didn't go into isolated cultivation yesterday, but he went into isolated cultivation today?" The 2 men stood up at the same time and glared at her. The young lady in white smiled gently. The realm master suddenly had an epiphany. Naturally, He has to go in a isolated cultivation. He can't possibly delay his isolated cultivation just because you two heroes are here. I'm sure you both know that this kind of spiritual enlightenment needs to be consolidated. Otherwise, you'll miss the best opportunity. Oomph. Looks like your realm master is deliberately hiding from us. Hijinda sneered. Is it because he has a guilty conscience? He was tall and burly, handsome, heroic, and upright. One could tell at a glance that he was not a bad person. He was an upright and virtuous person. The young lady in white pursed her lips and smiled. Heroes, what do you mean? Oomph. 2 of our disciples were crippled. It must have been done by great light surpassing state. Otherwise, it wouldn't be such a coincidence that they were the ones who were crippled, Hijinda said coldly. The young lady in white said, Hero this matter is actually very easy to understand. Do we need to do this? The 2 of them were pursuing our junior sister Sue. They didn't hurt her. Why do we cripple them? They must think that we're being overbearing. Hijinda scoffed. The young lady in white smiled. Hero you also know how to be overbearing? So what if we are? Hijinda said coldly. Who asked you not to be one of the 9 divisions? If you were one of them, we wouldn't dare to do this. The young lady in white said, even if we aren't one of the 9 divisions, we aren't afraid of them. That's why we won't send people to cripple these 2 young heroes. We'll just take it slow. Heroes, you 2 are so wise. I'm sure you've thought of someone framing us. Framing? The 2 shook their heads and scoffed. There are only a few people in the world who can do this. Why would these experts want to frame us? The young lady in white shook her head. I don't know. In short, we didn't do it. If you say it's not, then it's not. Hijinda said coldly. If Realm Master Son is going to be like this, then we can only go back and tell the truth. Chapter 2458. Chuli narrowed his eyes, deep in thought. Since the 2 sects wanted to fight, there was no point in saying anything else. They should just attack. Great Light Surpassing State was not that weak, and he could get some spirit fruits. Thinking of this, he appeared in front of Sun Mingwe in a flash. Sun Mingwe was changing her clothes. She was wearing undergarments, revealing her jade-like arms that emitted a warm luster. She turned to look at him. Chuli said, You saw through their intentions, didn't you? Sun Mingwe blushed and quickly put on her clothes to cover her beautiful body. She scoffed. It's just a little trick. Windstorm Palace and Lai K Palace want to attack Great Light Surpassing State. Who gave them the courage? Chuli looked puzzled. Maybe they think I'm easy to bully since I just inherited the position of the Realm Master. Sun Mingwe sneered. Sects have always been like this. There's no good or evil. Chuli asked, What are you going to do? Fight, Sun Mingwe said. I don't have to be afraid of them. Chuli asked, You really want to fight? It's been peaceful for too long. Everything in the realm is too old, Sun Mingwe said. We need a war to rebuild Great Light Surpassing State. Chuli sighed. You're really cold as a realm master. There's no other way. I have to do this to let more disciples live better lives, Sun Mingwe said. Chuli said, I'll think of a way to stop it. No need, Sun Mingwe said. Come out at the most critical moment. Someone has their eyes on me. That's why the 2 sects dared to attack, Chuli said. I'd like to see which master it is. I'll go get some spirit fruits. Now that he had inherited the Imperial Cicada, his soul energy had greatly increased. Even if he encountered that wolf-like spirit beast, he would be able to escape. Before Sun Mingwe could refuse, he had already disappeared. Sun Mingwe watched him disappear and shook her head helplessly. She knew that it was impossible to refuse. She was in a daze. She thought of the impending war and how many disciples would die because of it. She could not help but feel guilty. Although she sounded tough to Chuli, she was actually soft-hearted. However, she soon shook her head. Nothing in this world would not happen just because she did not want it to happen. Both Windstorm Palace and Lai K Palace would not let Great Light Surpassing Realm off just because she begged for mercy. For the sake of their own interests, the 2 tribes would not care about the lives of innocent people. The ones who deserved to die were these fellows, not the disciples of Great Light Surpassing Realm. In a flash, Chuli appeared in the arcane realm. Seeing that the situation around him had not changed, he appeared halfway up the mountain. Even though he felt that he could defeat the spirit beast, he was not in a hurry to fight it. The spirit fruit was more important. He took a huge bag and picked one spirit fruit after another. Then, he disappeared again before there was any other movement. He concluded that Cheng Yuan still believed his words and did not immediately barge in. He didn't see Cheng Yuan's corpse, nor did he see the decrease in the number of spirit fruits around him. Clearly, no outsiders had barged in. Up until now, he was the only one picking the spirit fruits. Sun Mingwei saw him appear with a bag the size of a small hill on his back. It took up half of the room in an instant, and a faint fragrance wafted over. Her body instantly felt light, and all the pores on her body opened up, greedily inhaling the fragrance. Chu saw the change in her expression and smiled proudly. "Look at these." He opened the bag, and the fragrance became even stronger. Sun Mingyue took a closer look and immediately recognized these strange fruits that were overflowing with spiritual energy. She turned to look at Chu Li. "Where did you get these?" "The arcane realm," Chu Li replied. Sun Mingyue sighed. The arcane realm is indeed extraordinary. She had already heard about Chu Li's experience in the arcane realm. Now that she saw these strange fruits, she was even more curious about the arcane realm. She wanted to go in and see how many strange fruits could be harvested so crudely. Chu Li said, "These have their own magical effects. This purple fruit strengthens the body and nourishes vitality and enhances inner energy. The red fruit strengthens the heart and strength." He introduced these strange fruits one by one without holding back. Sun Mingyue's eyes sparkled like cold stars as she listened. After Chu Li finished his introduction, he smiled and said, "With the help of these strange fruits, can you guys fight? If they were really that amazing, we wouldn't be afraid of Windstorm Palace and Lai Ke Palace." Sun Mingyue sneered. "They weren't the best in the first place. If the Thunder Pool came, they could only run away." "Them? Oomph." Chu Li smiled and nodded. The Lai Ke Palace was slightly stronger, but the Windstorm Palace was ordinary. They were only slightly stronger than the Rainmaster Palace. Moreover, after the storm of Azura, many masters died in the foreign battlefields. Their current strength was not what it used to be. He Jinda and Sun Mingyue in the Basilica were still entangled with the girl in white. Rupturing stem? Distilling stem? Blasphemous stem sword? High restrain eunuch Lu Shu? Moat dumpling hiss? Moat dumpling hiss? Moat dumpling hiss? The girl in white was still talking. There was nothing strange about her. It showed that she had a high level of cultivation. Chu Li asked, "Who's the young lady in the Basilica?" "Gu Jiqing, my new disciple." "How is she compared to Li Meng?" Sun Mingyue smiled. Chu Li smiled. "Although she's not as good as Li Meng, she's not bad either." "You?" Sun Mingyue laughed. "You're too biased. Gu Jiqing is not weaker than Li Meng. She's calm and talented. Even if Li Meng comes up in the future, she might not be able to compete with her." Chu Li said, "Then who will be the future territory leader?" "That depends on each person's ability." Sun Mingyue smiled. "If Li Meng is good enough, then she'll be the leader. If she's not, then Jiqing will be the leader. Whoever is good enough will be the leader." Chu Li scoffed and did not say anything. Since Li Meng became Sun Mingyue's disciple, he was the one who taught her most of the time. He was the one who helped her build her foundation. If they were to talk about feelings, it was natural that he had a deep relationship with Li Meng. However, Gu Jiqing's nature was perfect. Her body was full of energy. She was really a rare material. With Sun Mingyue's care and polishing, she would definitely become a top-notch master. Even if Li Meng ascended in the future, she might not be able to compete with Sun Mingyue. Moreover, Li Meng was cultivating alone. She could not compare to Gu Jiqing, who was always by Sun Mingyue's side. He narrowed his eyes. He would not force Sun Mingyue to choose Li Meng. Instead, he would secretly help Li Meng. Sun Mingyue said, "Jiqing handles matters calmly. Aside from her lack of tact, she is not inferior to me. She has saved me a lot of trouble." "Very good." Chu Li nodded. "Not bad indeed." In the face of He Jinda and Sun Mingyue's aggressiveness, she could calmly turn around without falling into a disadvantageous position. She was really elegant. Even if he was biased towards Li Ming, he could not help but cheer. Go and get the disciples to consume the spirit fruits. You must keep this a secret. Otherwise, if news of this gets out, it will cause big trouble, Chu Li said. If all the sects knew that the light-surpassing boundary had so many spirit fruits, they would definitely be jealous. The light-surpassing boundary had become a fat piece of meat. Everyone wanted a piece of it. Chu Li's existence was a deterrent. Therefore, he had to show his deterrent power. When he thought of this, he appeared outside the Cyclone Palace in a flash. His white robe fluttered in the wind. He carried a sword case on his back. Chapter 2459. The Gale Temple was shrouded in a formation that was powerful. However, Chu Li was not afraid of it. No matter how powerful the formation was, it could not hide from the observation of the omniscient mirror. In addition to the flying star technique and the heavenly demonic aerial manipulation, it was as easy as walking on flat ground for him. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, the situation of the Gale Temple was clear. There were no powerful masters. It seemed that the Gale Temple was strong in appearance, but weak in reality. Perhaps the top masters were not in the temple, but cultivating elsewhere. He raised his voice and shouted, Chu Li greets Leader Su of the Gale Temple. The leader of the Gale Temple, Su Ying, was reading the files in the temple. He was not tall and had a shiny bald head. He looked simple and silly. Standing in the crowd, no one would think that he was the leader of the Gale Temple, one of the 9 divisions. He had a high position and power. When Su Ying heard Chu Li's voice, the files in his hands fell to the ground. His expression changed. Chu Li's voice was calm, but it was like thunder in the ears of the disciples of the Gale Temple. Their blood boiled and their vision went black. More than half of the disciples fainted immediately. Su Ying's expression changed drastically because Chu Li's voice was still so shocking even under the weakening of the formation. It was simply unstoppable. The catastrophe of the Windstorm Temple had arrived. He never thought that Chu Li would be so unscrupulous and actually attack them without warning. Chu Li raised his voice and said, Leader Su of the Gale Temple, please see me. His calm voice was even more powerful. The eyes of the injured disciples once again turned black, and another half of them fainted. His voice was like a giant hammer, directly knocking them unconscious. Chu Li wanted to say it a third time, but Su Ying already shouted, Master Chu, don't go too far. Chu Li chuckled. Does Hall Leader Su wish to see me? It's better not to see you. Su Ying stood at the entrance of the temple. His green robe was fluttering. He could already see the miserable state of the disciples. More than half of the disciples were lying on the martial arts field in front of the temple. They were all unconscious. Chu Li said, Leader Su, do you not dare to see me? His voice was flat and indifferent, but in the ears of the disciples, it was like a bronze bell. It shook their vision until their vision went dark, and their blood and chi shook. They spat out arrows of blood and collapsed weakly. Some were able to hold on and not lose consciousness, but most of them still lost consciousness. Chu Li shouted a few times, and the entire Tempest Temple collapsed. Su Ying felt a chill down his spine, but his expression became calmer. He crushed the jade talisman in his sleeve and stepped out of the formation. He came before Chu Li and gave him a fist salute. I'm Su Ying. Chu Li smiled and gave a fist salute. It's not easy to meet Hall Leader Su. If that's the case, then forget it, Su Ying said coldly. Chu Li sighed. Hall Leader Su, I'm here to seek forgiveness and apologize to you personally. What crime? Su Ying asked calmly. He wanted to delay the time and wait for the elders in the temple to come out. Only when they appeared together could they maintain the facade, or else the Temple of Windstorm would become a joke. The mountain protection formation was indeed working, but why couldn't it weaken Chu Li's voice? Not only could the mountain defense formation block vision, but it could also block out sound. This was the most basic of all. However, Chu Li's voice could be heard without any obstruction, causing most of the disciples in the hall to faint. It was terrifying. Chu Li sighed. I was the one who crippled that disciple of your palace, so I'm here to apologize. I see. Su-Ying nodded and said casually, "You must be angry at what happened to the disciple of great light surpassing realm. So you attacked him out of anger. But we can only do this, or else it will be a war between the Temple of Windstorm and the Palace of Windstorm." Chu Li smiled. "What? Picking on the weak, not daring to go against the Palace of Windstorm, so we can only deal with great light surpassing realm. That's how the world is," Su-Ying said calmly. "Chu Li, you understand, right?" Chu Li said, "I understand, but I can't forgive, so I could only cripple that disciple. Now, both your factions are safe and sound, and you even joined forces to bully Great Light Surpassing Realm. Is it because Great Light Surpassing Realm has just changed its leader, and there's no one else in the territory?" "Well," Su-Ying pondered for a moment and sighed. "There's nothing we can do about it. Chu Li, your martial arts may be strong, but you're just one person. We have our reservations, but we won't overthink it." As he spoke, 36 elders in green robes appeared beside him. Their faces were solemn, and they immediately surrounded Chu Li. They stared at him with piercing eyes and dense killing intent. It was obvious that they wanted to kill him. Chu Li glanced at the 36 elders in green robes, then looked at Su-Ying. He said calmly, "Palace Leader Su, why don't you think about it? Without these elders, can the Temple of Windstorm withstand it?" Su-Ying's face was solemn, and he remained silent. His eyes flashed, and he was indeed thinking about Chu Li's words. If the 36 elders were really destroyed by Chu Li, then the strength of the Temple of Windstorm would be greatly reduced. The Ray Master Palace was the best example. Chu Li said faintly, "I don't want to start a massacre. I just want to advise you to live in peace with great light surpassing realm, and let go of the previous grudges, so that others don't take advantage of it and benefit from it. If you insist on having a life and death battle, then don't blame me for being ruthless." He glanced at the 36 elders. Their expressions suddenly changed, and their bodies tensed up as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. This was a cold warning from their instincts. It was the most dangerous warning, and they couldn't wait to rush out and escape. Su-Ying was silent, and he was still hesitating. If they let Chu Li go, the Temple of Windstorm would show weakness. What would happen if they fought with Chu Li? Even if they won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory, and they would suffer huge losses. What would the consequences be? Would others hit them when they were down? Would they share a common hatred for the enemy, or would they secretly help them? Chu Li snorted, and the sword case opened by itself. 9 treasure swords slowly floated above his head, forming a sword wheel that rotated slowly. The brilliance of the 9 treasure swords was not obvious, and they were dim. They didn't seem to be dangerous. The 36 elders in green robes had a drastic change in expression, and their bodies tensed up. All their hair stood on end, and they issued the most tragic warning in their hearts. They must stay away from these 9 swords. It was too dangerous. They had lived to this age, and they became more sophisticated as they lived. Their instincts were accurate, and they were more sensitive to danger. They absolutely trusted their instincts, and a strong desire to retreat arose in their hearts. They didn't want to fight. "Cough, Palace Leader." A thin elder in green robes coughed softly. "You're a guest from afar. Since young Master Chu is here, let's talk inside." Su-Ying glanced at him and immediately understood what he meant. His expression relaxed, and he slowly nodded. "That was my fault. Young Master Chu, please serve us some tea inside." Chu Li smiled and nodded. "Please." The 9 swords entered the sword case by themselves. This skill alone was enough to shock them. To be able to control the long swords without a sound, and to do so at the same time, it was an ability that they couldn't hope to match. Everyone immediately relaxed, and they followed Chu Li into the basilica. At this time, the disciples outside the basilica had already disappeared. It was as if nothing had happened here, and the blood that spurted out from their injuries had been wiped away. Everyone came to the basilica and took their seats. Chu Li took a cup of tea from a young disciple, and without hesitation, he took a sip and slowly put it down. He smiled. "Has Palace Leader Su made a decision? Our grudge with the great light surpassing land will be written off," Su-Ying said slowly. Chu clapped and smiled. Palace leader Su is wise. Thank you, thank you. Su Ying smiled bitterly. He picked up the cup and took a sip and sighed. I didn't expect young Master Chu to have such a profound cultivation level. It's not worth mentioning. Chu smiled. I'm still a little weaker than Song Wuji. Song Wuji. Su Ying shook his head and sighed. Chapter 2460. Chu said, I was waiting for Song Wuji to come out of isolation for another battle. The last time we fought, I was at a disadvantage. I wonder how much stronger he has become after his isolation. I'm really looking forward to it. As he finished, he revealed the loneliness of a master and took another sip of tea. Su Ying said, I really had no choice this time. I had to force myself to do it, or I wouldn't be able to back down. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have been so stubborn. I could have just laughed it off. Chu smiled and said, Palace leader Su is a man of great righteousness, but this matter still has to be attributed to the Like Palace. They've been restless, want to take me down notch. Is it because the Like Palace has produced an extraordinary master? About that, Su Ying hesitated. Chu said, Is that the heaven-shaking tower? Hee. Su Ying laughed and lowered his head to drink his tea. Chu nodded confidently. It seemed like it was the heaven-shaking tower. The heaven-shaking tower really could not be underestimated. The continuous emergence of masters might have something to do with their divination. Divination allowed them to know where there were fortuitous encounters, and those who obtained fortuitous encounters could produce masters. Chu sighed. The heaven-shaking tower is indeed majestic. However, their strength is built on the luck of others. If they keep doing this, aren't they afraid of the backlash? What backlash? Su Ying was surprised. Chu said, the backlash of the heavens. One cannot take all the benefits, or the heavens will be jealous. This is an iron law. I believe that the heaven-shaking tower understands this, but they are still greedy. This time, the master must have come from a fortuitous encounter, right? About that, we're not sure. Since the heaven-shaking tower said they have a way to deal with you, Master Chu, they must have a way. Su Ying sighed. Master Chu, you still have to be careful. Since Gale Palace had surrendered, if Chu won in the end, they would be forgiven. After all, Chu was too strong and they could not force themselves. However, if Chu lost, they would be in an awkward situation. They would be laughed at and ignored. Even if they did not end up like the Rainmaster Palace, they would not be much stronger. The heaven-shaking pavilion's position was respected and was only slightly lower than that of the Taihao Peak. If they wanted to deal with Chu and the Windstorm Palace did not comply, they would definitely be isolated by the 9 divisions. It would not be easy for them to raise their heads. That was why he had been hesitant and tormented earlier. Now that he had made his choice, he could only walk to the end and gamble on his luck. He sighed and said, It is said that this young master Jin's cultivation is peerless. He's the next Song Wuji. Chu laughed. The next Song Wuji. Where did so many Song Wujis come from? Could it be that this young master Jin is a deity who ascended from the heavens? It's a disciple of the heaven-shaking pavilion. Su Ying shook his head slowly and said, However, he is extremely talented and possesses a photographic memory. He is a natural-born genius and can master any martial art the moment he practices it. Furthermore, his meridians are wide and connected, saving a normal person 100 years of hard work. He is unbelievably strong. Chu nodded slowly. How is he compared to Song Wuji? I'm afraid it's still not enough. After all, it's still too early, Su Ying said. Chu smiled. That's it then. As long as he's not stronger than Song Wuji, it's fine. Will he come? He will appear at the most appropriate time, Su Ying said. Chu pondered for a moment and said, All right then, I'll go to the Like Hall. This, Su Ying hesitated. Elder Han is actually the same as me. We have no choice but to do this. The heaven-shaking pavilion is in charge of this matter. We have no choice but to comply. Chu smiled. That will depend on whether Hall Leader Han is as wise as you, Hall Leader Su. Sigh. Su Ying smiled bitterly. This matter is extremely risky. Young Master Chu, you must be careful of this Jin Ning. Since they had surrendered now, they could only bet on Chu Li being stronger and counteracting Jin Ning. If Chu Li was suppressed by Jin Ning, then there was no point in talking about it. The Cyclone Palace would be in deep trouble. No one knew how many years it would take for them to rise again. Chu Li nodded slowly and gave a fist salute before disappearing. Su Ying turned his head to look at the surrounding elders and let out a long sigh. His face was no longer calm and composed. Instead, it was unusually distressed. Elders, I really don't know if this is the right move or the wrong move. Don't worry, Hall Leader. This Chu Li is strong enough. The thin elder who had spoken earlier said in a low voice, how can he be an ordinary top-notch master if he can come and go so freely in our formation? That's true. Su Ying cheered up. The Cyclone Palace's formation was not just for show. It was a top-notch formation passed down from ancient times. It was also what they relied on. Now, Chu Li could easily transmit his voice into the formation and make all the disciples faint. He could still come and go as he pleased. Chu Li's abilities were stronger than they had imagined. As expected of someone who could fight against Song Wuji, Chu Li did not go straight to the vacancy hall. Instead, he went back to the great light surpassing realm. He saw that Sun Mingwei was gathering some core disciples and was not in a hurry to give them spirit fruits. He smiled and cultivated the spirit cultivation technique for a while before going to the vacancy hall. The vacancy hall was also located on the mountainside. The peak was located outside a large city. The structure of the 9 divisions was almost the same. They were all built outside bustling large cities. Moreover, each division was a city. They could protect a city, and at the same time, they could stay in the city. As soon as Chu Li appeared in the vacancy hall, before he could say anything, a man in a purple robe appeared. He was tall and had a strong aura. He gave a fist salute and said, "Are you young Master Chu?" Chu Li gave a fist salute. "Yes, I am Chu Li. Greetings, Hall Leader Han." He immediately recognized the middle-aged man with a strong aura in front of him. He was the hall leader of the vacancy hall, Han Wuwei. Han Wuwei smiled. "Young Master Chu, please." Chu Li nodded his head and followed Han Wuwei inside. On the martial arts field in front of the hall, many disciples were practicing martial arts. More than 10 elders stood at the side and watched. They had a steady aura, and their eyes were like lightning. They were intimidating. They were all people with profound cultivation levels. Chu Li glanced at them and knew that these 16 elders were the elders of the vacancy hall. Their cultivation levels were the highest. His eyes flashed with a blue brilliance, but he did not attack with his god-punishing thundersword. The 16 old men's faces were stern as they avoided his gaze. The vacancy divine power that they cultivated was about speed. However, blindly pursuing speed would cause them to lose their composure. Therefore, the more profound the vacancy divine power was, the more steady one's aura was, and the more reliable they looked. The power of their gaze was the manifestation of the vacancy divine power. Those with profound cultivation levels could cause people to faint with their gaze. Chu Li sighed and turned to look at Han Wuwei. "Does Hall Leader Han want to see my cultivation level?" "There's no need for that." Han Wuwei chuckled. "I know how powerful young Master Chu is. We were just fooling around with the great light surpassing state. Don't take it seriously." Chu Li smiled. "That's good. But young Master Chu, you still have to be careful. The heaven-shaking pavilion wants to deal with you." Han Wuwei said, "We're just pawns that were pushed out. We're just stirring things up and testing your strength, young Master Chu." Chu Li asked, "Where's young Master Jin?" "He'll be here soon." Han Wuwei said, "Whether you live or die depends on the battle with him. If young Master Chu can win, the 9 divisions will behave themselves." Chu Li smiled. The heaven-shaking pavilion seems to be very confident. They're divining the heaven's secrets. Once they go against you, young Master Chu, everyone will think that they're confident, Han Wuwei said. He had already received news from the Gale Palace and knew how shocking Chu Li's cultivation level was. His resistance disappeared immediately. Chapter 2461. It was not that Like Hall and Gale Hall did not know how powerful Chu Li was, but they did not expect him to be this powerful. After all, he was forced to flee by Song Wuji. Although he managed to keep his life, who knew if Song Wuji was being merciful and purposely left him as an opponent to motivate himself? The current Chu Li could not be mentioned in the same breath as the Chu Li of the past. He was several times more powerful now. Just the sound of his inner energy alone was enough to make all the disciples of Windstorm Temple faint. It directly destroyed the morale of Windstorm Temple and the will of Leek Temple to resist. Since he was so powerful, going against him would be asking for trouble. It was foolish. Admitting defeat was the only way to save themselves. Otherwise, Gale Hall and Like Hall would have been destroyed by Chu Li already. Chu Li nodded. If Heaven's Shaking Tower has such a master, why is it still the second sect? Among the 9 divisions, Heaven's Shaking Tower was ranked first. Heaven's Shaking Tower had been working hard to replace and surpass Heaven's Shaking Tower. This was a secret that everyone knew. Heaven's Shaking Tower was happy to see this happen. It also encouraged the disciples to work hard to improve their cultivation so that they would not be complacent and lose their drive. Heaven's Shaking Tower relied on divination and could snatch fortuitous encounters, just like the Great Dream Sect in the heavenly demonic realm. However, Heaven's Shaking Tower was more reliable and would not clash with others. If someone arrived before them, Heaven's Shaking Tower would retreat and not compete with them. Coupled with their outstanding performance in the foreign battlefields, they completely dispelled people's ill will. Thinking of this, Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Heaven's Shaking Tower's method of not competing with others for fortuitous encounters was brilliant. Their divination technique was unparalleled in the Outland. Even if they predicted fortuitous encounters, they would be one step ahead of others. It was rare for them to fall behind others. Even if they fell into others' hands, the truly important fortuitous encounters would probably be silenced by them. As for those less important encounters, they would purposely fall behind and let others have them. After a few times, it would be enough to build their reputation and let others know of Heaven's Shaking Tower's noble character and unquestionable integrity. Many people could see this method of winning people's hearts, but they did not say it out loud to avoid offending Heaven's Shaking Tower for no reason. Sigh. In the end, Heaven's Shaking Tower is too strong. Han Wuwei had a look of fascination on his face as he sighed. Not only are their martial arts profound, far superior to the other divisions, but their disciples are all extremely talented. With the two combined, no one can compare to them. Although the Heaven's Shaking Pavilion is strong, their disciples are not as good as the Great Sky Peak. Chu Li asked, now that they have Jin Ning, will they be able to take first place? It's all up to you, young Master Chu. Han Wuwei said, you are Jin Ning's touchstone. If he can defeat you, he will also lose face for Great Sky Peak. You are the number 2 expert praised by Great Sky Peak's Peak Lord. Chu Li could not help but laugh. Peak Leader Wang said something like that? Peak Leader Wang once told others that Song Wuji is the strongest in the world, and you, young Master Chu, are second. He is far inferior to you, young Master Chu. Han Wuwei nodded and said, he said it himself, it's definitely true. Chu Li replied, Peak Leader Wang, you're flattering me. Han Wuwei said, Peak Lord Wang wouldn't easily comment on others. Since he said it, it must be true. Chu Li sighed. I'm afraid there are a lot of people who want to trample on me. That's right. Han Wuwei said, Song Wuji can't defeat anyone. As for you, young Master Chu. As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. Only now did he know that Wang Shoren was right. Chu Li's martial arts was indeed the number 2 expert. The others who wanted to defeat him were simply dreaming. Chu Li nodded and said, all right, I'll be going then. He gave a fist salute and disappeared in a flash. Han Wuwei watched him come and go as he pleased. He felt a chill down his spine, but there was nothing he could do. How could he fight against this kind of person? Even if Heaven's Shake Tower found out, he had nothing to feel guilty about. Chu Li returned to his courtyard in great light surpassing. A moment later, Sun Mingyue came over. Her white clothes fluttered in the wind, and there was a smile on her beautiful face. She came in with a delicate fragrance and asked, "Have the two sects bowed their heads?" Chu Li smiled and nodded. They collapsed at the first touch without putting up any resistance. So it was Heaven Shake Tower who was playing tricks behind the scenes. The reason is because of me. Heaven Shake Tower wants to trample on me to advance. Heaven Shake Tower. Sun Mingwei sneered. They're up to no good. Chu Li said, it's inevitable that those who predict the future will play tricks. They've always wanted to surpass Taihao Peak. I heard that a top-notch master has appeared and wants to trample on me. I'll have to go into isolated cultivation for the next few days. No one will disturb you. Sun Mingwei sighed in relief. Fortunately, I didn't give them all the mutant fruits. To avoid future trouble, she did not take out all the mutant fruits. She only found a few top-notch disciples to focus on training and block the news. A huge battle had actually been averted, so there was no need to worry about Great Light surpassing Tower anymore. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Sun Mingwei was meticulous and calculated. She was indeed a rare person. Sun Mingwei waved her hand and said, regarding Heaven Shake Tower, you can't be careless. They have many fortuitous encounters, and many of these fortuitous encounters can't be cultivated. Chu Li sighed. Such a large sect had a deep foundation. No one knew when a powerful figure would emerge. There were even many top-notch masters who hid their edge and hid in the dark, only to strike at a critical moment. Moreover, such a large sect also knew how to hide their strength and bide their time. They would not forcefully stand out. This time, they dared to look for him. Although there was a grudge, it was mostly because they were confident that they could defeat him. When he thought of this, his desire to go into isolated cultivation grew stronger. Sun Mingwei sat on the low couch opposite him. I'll protect you. Chu Li sat on the couch and began to think. He could not use the Heavenly Demon Blade technique to deal with people from Heaven Shake Tower. He could try the Heavenly Spirit Scripture, but unfortunately, the Heavenly Spirit Scripture was almost at its peak. It was almost impossible to break through to the 9th level. He suddenly thought of the Sky Patrol official. Thus, he took out the Sky Patrol official and carefully observed it. He no longer needed the Sky Patrol official to cultivate the observation technique. However, he still needed the Sky Patrol official if he wanted to spiritually travel to the heavens. It was made of a strange material and sealed with a strange formation. He faintly felt that there might be an entrance above it. It was the entrance to the next level. However, this entrance could only be entered by the soul and not by the body. In reality, spiritually traveling to the heavens was no different from ascending for a short period of time. When he thought of this, he felt that the Sky Patrol official was infinitely mysterious. If he could see through it, ascending would be a piece of cake. Unfortunately, this Sky Patrol official was wrapped in an invisible force, and the omniscient mirror could not observe it. What was even more mysterious was that he thought he could observe it. Later on, he realized that it was just an illusion that deceived him. The omniscient mirror could see through the illusion and see the truth, but it was still deceived. This showed how extraordinary this Sky Patrol official was. Sun Mingwei frowned and looked at him. You're going to spiritually travel? Chu Li smiled. Don't worry, it won't be dangerous. How can it not be dangerous? Sun Mingwei scoffed. But it's fine. She's ascended for so long. You should be worried about her. Chu Li smiled without saying a word. He really wanted to see if he could find Shao Qi through the Sky Patrol official. It would be best if he could contact Shao Qi to relieve his longing. Chapter 2462. Be careful. Sun Mingwei scoffed. She did not have any opinion on Chu Li's actions. Although she was slightly jealous, she suppressed it because she knew it was useless. After all, Shao Qi was his first wife and his first woman. However, she was worried about him. The former realm master, Su Xiangyi, knew that the Sky Inspectorate was extremely dangerous. Not only was it dangerous to cultivate, but there was also the risk of becoming addicted to it. Most importantly, it was dangerous to go astray. If one encountered someone who was sensitive to the soul or cultivated sorcery, their soul would often be destroyed. However, she was too lazy to explain, as she knew that Chuli would not mind. He had come this far because he was fearless and faced difficulties head-on. If he was afraid, he would not have become who he was today. Chuli smiled. It's not as dangerous as you think. I have a way to protect myself. That's great, Sun Mingwe said. Chuli bit his left index finger, and 2 drops of blood dripped onto the sky inspectorate. He then closed his eyes and channeled all of his energy into the sky inspectorate. Sun Mingwe looked over and saw that the sky inspectorate was slowly brightening with a warm luster. It was originally as black as ink, but now it was turning blue and crystal clear like a piece of jade. She stared at the sky inspectorate without blinking, afraid that something unexpected would happen. Boom! A muffled sound like thunder was heard. Her body kept shaking, and she could not control herself. The sky inspectorate emitted a dazzling light before it disappeared. Then, the surroundings dimmed, and the sky inspectorate returned to its original appearance. It was just a black iron plate, and the strange phenomenon from before had completely disappeared. Sun Mingwe looked at Chu Li, but saw that he was motionless like an old monk in meditation. His energy was completely gone, as if he was an empty body. In this state, he was at his weakest and had no strength to resist, so he needed protection. Boom! Chu Li heard the sound of thunder. Rays of light flashed in front of him, but he could not see anything clearly. It was his first time astray, and he knew that there would be strange phenomena, so he did not panic. Instead, he quietly closed his eyes. Even with his eyes closed, the light was still flashing in front of him. He suddenly remembered that he did not have a body and was only in the state of a soul. He tried to understand the difference in his soul state. It was relaxed and joyful, as if he had been freed from his shackles. It was exceptionally refreshing. It was as if his surroundings were warm, and he did not have to worry about his soul dissipating. This was obviously the advantage of the sky inspectorate. The dazzling flash dissipated, revealing a fresh and moving world in front of him. Without his eyes, the world seemed brighter and more alluring. The omniscient mirror was his eyes. He was used to using the omniscient mirror in place of his eyes, so he did not feel any discomfort when he was in his soul state. Instead, it was no different from usual, other than the fact that he was more relaxed without the restraint of his body. There was no other difference. There were still many Buddhas and heavenly demons in the void of his mind. All kinds of mystical arts were still in his mind. Other than the absence of his body, everything else was the same. For the time being, he gave up on researching the miraculous uses of the patrolling heavenly token. Why would his soul be soaked in warm water and prevent dissipation? Even if he were to research it now, he would not be able to find out anything. He only remembered it and would slowly research it in the future. He realized that he was like a cloud floating in the sky, looking down at the earth below him. The land here was no different from the lower realm, except that the forest was more luxuriant and the color was fresher. It looked more pleasant. Looking at the lush forest and the surroundings, the giant trees towered into the sky, blocking out the sun and the sky. The weeds under the trees were still fresh and lush even without sunlight. One could tell that the spiritual energy here was abundant. With a jolt of his heart, the scenery in front of him instantly moved backward. It was as if he was performing a light body technique. Even the omniscient mirror could feel the scenery distorting. It was evident that the speed was so fast that it had exceeded the scope of light body technique. He kept moving forward and advanced for half an hour in one go. Feeling slightly tired, he stopped and suspended in the air to rest, to see if he could recover his soul energy. Unfortunately, after resting for a while, he realized that he was still tired. His soul energy would not recover, and the patrolling heavenly token could not recover his soul. This was a weakness. Indeed, no one was perfect and nothing was perfect. He thought for a while and looked at the pile of stones not far away. Strands of spiritual energy transformed into his arms and piled up the stones. Then, an azure short sword appeared out of thin air. It was his god-punishing thunder sword, which was originally hidden in his mind and could appear now. The god-killing thunder sword flashed, and the rocks were cut into regular shapes like tofu. Then, they were piled up under the lift of the spirit chi. The god-killing thunder sword drew out strange symbols one after another, as if it was flying. It was incomparably complicated, and the bystanders were dazzled just by looking at it. A rotary pagoda soon stood in this world. Chuli felt inexplicably happy. However, he also felt tired. Therefore, he continued to build the stone pagoda and built 9 of them in one go. They were all located in this mountain range. The 9-tripod heaven suppression formation could also be operated in this world. Chuli kept the god-punishing thunder sword back into the void of his mind and floated into a rotary pagoda. He felt the strange aura around him and activated the spirit cultivation technique. The strange aura began to strengthen his soul. Chuli was so comfortable that he almost moaned. Unfortunately, he did not have a body and could not make a sound. However, he was intoxicated by the comfortable feeling. The spirit cultivation technique, combined with the rotary pagoda, was the best way to absorb and transform his soul energy. After a while, he looked like a new man and felt better than before. Not only did his soul recover, but it had also become stronger. He stopped when he could not activate the spirit cultivation technique, no matter how hard he tried. He exited the rotary pagoda and moved forward again. He ran for another 2 hours in one go. When he felt tired, he used the same method and his soul became stronger. He immediately discovered the way to strengthen his soul. Every time he was slightly tired, he would activate the spirit cultivation technique. This way, his soul would become stronger quickly. It was not like before when he only activated the spirit cultivation technique. He could feel the vastness of this world. Although the speed of his soul shift could not be compared to the void shift, it was still much faster than using light body technique. The speed was shocking, and it was similar to an airplane in the future. After running at this speed for 4 hours, he was still deep in the mountains. There were no signs of human habitation. This showed how big this world was. He continued forward and ran in a direction. After another 2 hours and 15 minutes, he stopped and built another rotary pagoda. After his soul became stronger, he moved forward again. He ran from morning to evening. The setting sun was magnificent and vast. He found a small town that was very lively. He scanned it with the omniscient mirror and found that there were about 100,000 people. This was only a small town, but it was so densely populated. He was not in a hurry to enter the small town. Instead, he built another 10 rotary pagoda 100 miles away from the small town. He first recovered his soul and became stronger. Inside the rotary pagoda, he used the omniscient mirror to observe everything in the small town and understand the customs here. He could see what the people here were thinking, and through this, he could understand their temperament and common sense. Chapter 2463. The small town was bustling with restaurants, tea houses, inns, and shops. The governor's residence was right in the middle with 24 protectors in the open and 36 in the dark. Chuli was shocked. With such tight security, it was obvious that this place was not peaceful. Moreover, the protectors had high cultivation levels, and the people walking on the streets had high cultivation levels. In his outland, they would be considered masters. This was a small town at the border. It was probably not a place where martial arts were the most flourishing. If the people walking on the streets had such high cultivation levels, the people in the bustling big cities must have higher cultivation levels. As expected of a place with rich spiritual energy, it was easy for people to improve their cultivation levels and cultivate quickly. A celestial in the outland realm who cultivated for 10 years might only be equivalent to 1 year for the people here. However, in the path of martial arts, the more one needed to understand. It was not easy to improve so quickly. Sometimes, if one's understanding was not enough, they could not improve even if they cultivated for hundreds or even thousands of years. The elders of the Heavenly Wind sect in the arcane realm were the best example. Chuli wanted to know if he could attach his soul to someone. It was much more convenient to do things with a local's body than a soul's body. However, this was extremely dangerous. The relationship between the body and the soul was extremely complicated. He did not understand it, so he did not dare to try it. If he attached his soul to someone else, his soul would be trapped and unable to escape. He would not be able to find a place to cry, even if he wanted to. Would he have to give up his lower body? He stayed here to observe but gain a lot. His soul was far stronger than the people here. The omniscient mirror could see everything clearly, including the circulation of their heart techniques. He found 4 people among the protectors of the governor's residence. Their heart techniques were recorded in the martial arts of Tai Hao Peak. They were all powerful martial arts. The cultivation level of the disciples of Tai Hao Peak was far from these protectors. It was obvious that their cultivation levels were not ordinary in this world, and they had good comprehension. Chu did not study these martial arts and did not bother to pay attention to them. However, he saw the most important secret skill, Night's Bloom's Dream. A female protector of the governor's residence was also cultivating this skill. When Night's Bloom's Dream was activated, her body was like a shadow, swaying gently and faintly as if it would disappear at any time. The omniscient mirror directly looked into the female protector's mind and found that there was no hatred in her. She did not use her lifespan to comprehend it either. Instead, she treated it as a profound secret skill to cultivate. It was just that her progress would be slower, but she would eventually be able to cultivate it to a very profound level. In the end, he was able to become one with the void. Wherever his thoughts were, he could do whatever he wanted in an instant. He was completely unharmed. It was extremely mysterious and powerful. The epiphyllum dream secret technique came from the epiphyllum divine canon. It was one of the secret techniques of the epiphyllum divine religion, but it was not the strongest secret technique in the epiphyllum divine canon. Chu was very interested in the wisdom of the epiphyllum and wanted to get to the bottom of it. If he could let Fu Kaiwei cultivate it, it would greatly increase her level, which would be very beneficial to the epiphyllum's dream. Thus, he calmed his heart and stared at the female guard. After a day and a day, he realized that she did not have the epiphyllum divine canon and was eager to read it. However, as a disciple of the epiphyllum divine religion, if she could make a great contribution this time and eliminate the governor, it would not be a problem for her to read the epiphyllum divine canon. Chu Li's interest was piqued. He wondered if he could follow this female guard. He did not need to follow her all the time, as long as he could find her. In the future, after she completed her mission and read the epiphyllum divine canon, he would be able to see it in her mind. However, it was best to read this kind of divine canon in person. The materials used in the divine canon and the spiritual power contained in it were extremely important to comprehend. If he missed it and only looked at the words, he would miss the best opportunity to comprehend it. The female guard was beautiful, but she had put on makeup to hide her true appearance. She was only slightly delicate and pretty, but not annoying. Her figure was originally graceful, but as soon as she left her room, she immediately became burly, making it hard for people to be tempted. The epiphyllum dream heart technique could do this. Fu Kaiwei probably did not even know about it. The secret of the epiphyllum dream heart technique needed to be carefully explored. Its ability was an extremely mysterious secret technique, and it could not be underestimated because of its lack of attack power. Chu Li had never dared to simply try to host his soul, as he was afraid that he would be shackled here. He could only watch everything from the sidelines, watching the secret techniques they cultivated, and his knowledge of martial arts greatly increased. However, what he wanted to figure out the most now was which level of heaven he was on. Was he on the higher level, or was he on the higher level? If he was on the higher level, he could find Shao Qi, but if he was on the higher level, it would be impossible. He used a secret technique to contact Shao Qi, but there was no response. Perhaps it was because the distance was too far, or she was separated by something, so he could not determine whether Shao Qi was on the higher level or not. After a day and a night, he was worried that his body would be damaged if his mind wandered for too long, so he had a thought. Suddenly, the power of extreme light carried him forward. He could only feel the light, but he did not know anything else. When the light dissipated, He felt his body become heavy as if he was wearing a thick armor, heavy and solid. He slowly opened his eyes and saw Sun Mingyue opposite him. Sun Mingyue was staring at him motionlessly. Her eyes were bright, and her eyebrows were covered with a layer of worry. When she saw him open his eyes, her bright eyes suddenly lit up, and she stared straight at him. "How is it?" Chuli smiled. "It feels good. Did you really go up?" Sun Mingyue asked. Chuli thought for a while. "It should be on the higher level or one level higher. Unfortunately, it's too big. I've only just come into contact with people, so I don't know the general situation yet." "So, you haven't found Shao Qi?" Sun Mingyue asked. Chuli sighed. "It's easier said than done. Wei saw such a huge world. He felt that it would not be easy to find Shao Qi. Perhaps he cannot find her at all, or else why could he not sense her? If he could sense her, he could directly teleport over no matter how far away he was. Even if it was on another level, the void was still the void, and there was no change." Sun Mingyue said, "Take your time. You'll find her eventually." Chuli asked, "How long has it been?" Sun Mingyue looked out the window. "About 2 hours." Chuli pondered, and he was more certain that it was not the same world. A day had passed in that world, but only 2 hours had passed here. A day in heaven was equivalent to a year on Earth. Theoretically, time should be slower in the higher levels, but it was the other way around. Could it be that it was not the higher level, but the lower realm? When he thought about the abundance and purity of the spiritual energy there, he immediately dispelled the thought. It could not be the lower realm, so it could only be the higher level or even the higher level. But why did time change so much? Then, he shook his head and laughed. That was only a legend, and this was the real higher level. However, there were benefits to this too, as he could have more time to wander and admire that world. It was no wonder that those who obtained the Sky Patrol credentials would be so obsessed with it that they could not extricate themselves. It was indeed fascinating, and the novelty of seeing another world was unparalleled excitement, so they wished they could stay there forever. Sun Mingyue asked, "Do you feel any danger?" "I'm fine." Chuli smiled. "Instead, it's a way to strengthen the soul. This Sky Patrol credentials is indeed mysterious. You still have to be careful," Sun Mingyue said. "Every time you summon me to protect you, your body will be defenseless after you wander." Chuli said, "I'll use a formation to protect you." Chapter 2464. It was cruel to ask Sun Mingyue to protect him while he went astray. He could protect himself as long as he sat in the Chakram Pagoda. Sun Mingyue frowned. "If the formation doesn't work, I'll do it." After Chu Li's soul left his body, he was like a piece of wood without any resistance. If someone like Heaven Shaking Tower could predict his situation and take advantage of the situation, he would be helpless no matter how powerful he was. Without a body, it would be tragic for his soul to exist. Sun Mingyue did not want him to end up like that. Chuli sighed. "It's okay. They can't predict me." He understood Sun Mingyue's worries, but he did not want her to keep guarding him. It would be unfair to her if he went to look for Shao Qi. Sun Mingyue said angrily, "Instead of being afraid, I'll guard you." "Don't worry, I'm not that petty." Chuli smiled bitterly. He was indebted to a beauty. What else could he say? Sun Mingyue asked, "Can a stray help you improve your abilities?" "Very much," Chuli replied. Not to mention his deeper understanding of martial arts. The strengthening of his soul would also improve the God-punishing Thunder Sword, the omniscient mirror, and all his divine powers and martial arts. With the God-punishing Thunder Sword and the real cloud-slashing power, he was confident that he could restrain Song Wuji. However, Song Wuji was an isolated cultivation this time, so he was not confident anymore. He could not wait to improve his abilities. The cloud-slashing power was difficult to cultivate and could not improve in a short time. Only the God-punishing Thunder Sword improved rapidly under the spirit cultivation technique. Of course, he would not let go of such an opportunity. This time, Ji Ning was even more of a challenge. Sun Mingyue sighed. "Let's astray then. I suddenly feel uneasy today. I'm afraid that Ji Ning is not as simple as he seems. It's better to be careful." Chuli nodded. Heaven's shaking tower was very cautious. Since they dared to go against him, they must be very confident. Otherwise, they would not have damaged their dignity. However, he could not go to Heaven's shaking tower to beg for mercy. This time, he had to give them a hard blow to make them behave. He closed his eyes again when he thought about this. His vision brightened, and the scenery seemed to change rapidly. When the light returned to normal, he found himself at the place where he first came in. He suddenly understood that this heavenly inspection token was indeed an entrance, just like the gates of heaven. Every time he entered, he would appear at this place. As such, he really had to plan it well. Fortunately, he was still within the range of the 9 tripod cauldrons against heaven. With a sudden flash, he appeared outside the small town in the next moment. He stayed in the chakram tower and observed the entire small town with the omniscient mirror. Through the soul-refining art, he continuously recovered from his exhaustion. Instantly teleporting through the void didn't consume as much energy as he had imagined. It seemed that moving the soul forward was far more tiring than teleporting through the void. At this time, it was already late at night. A bright moon hung in the sky like an ice wheel rotating slowly. The moonlight was like water and as thin as a veil. It was no different from the appearance of the outer heavens, unlike the arcane realm, which was solid. The people here were no different from Devis. The only difference was that their cultivation bases were higher, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was denser and purer. Other than that, there wasn't much of a difference. The biggest difference was the lifespan. It was said that those with a high cultivation level could live for 10,000 years, which was really shocking. He recalled his experience of astral travel. There was a day here, but there were only 2 hours in the outer heavens. In this case, 1 day in the outer heavens was equivalent to 12 days in the first heaven, and 1 year in the outer heavens was equivalent to 12 years in the outer heavens. The outer heavens had lived for nearly 1,000 years, so it wasn't strange for people to live for 10,000 years here. Tang Yuan died. Suddenly, there was a shout. The protectors in the Castellan's residence were alerted. 14 men in black rushed into the Castellan's residence and divided into 3 groups. One group was responsible for setting the fire, while the other 2 rushed to the courtyard where the Castellan was. The protectors could only disperse and intercept them one by one. The cultivation levels of these 14 men in black were higher than the protectors of the Castellan's residence. Chuli estimated that their cultivation levels had reached Fu Siwei's level. If they were in the outer heavens, they would already be extraordinary masters. The protectors of the Castellan's residence were beaten until they retreated to the courtyard where the Castellan was. Then, they put up a strong resistance and refused to let the men in black take a step forward. Chuli couldn't help but admire their loyalty. When he looked into their minds, he realized that they had no choice but to be loyal. They turned out to be followers of the Seven Seas sect, and the Castellan was the commander of the Seven Seas sect. If anything happened to him, not only would these followers die, but their families would also be buried with them. Chuli was speechless. The Seven Seas sect was vicious but effective. They forced everyone to serve to their deaths. They would rather die than to implicate their families. The 14 men in black were also fighting with all their might. Chuli looked into their minds and realized that they were disciples of the 8 Baron sect. 10 of the 8 Baron sect's disciples had been killed by the commander of the Seven Seas sect and the Castellan of Luoxia City. The disciples of the 8 Baron sect had come to seek revenge. They must kill Tang Yuan, or else their senior brothers would not be able to rest in peace. Even if they died after Tang Yuan, they would be able to live up to their friendship as fellow disciples. Chuli couldn't help but be surprised. He didn't expect them to be so hot-blooded and loyal. He had only heard of them, but never seen them. He met them occasionally in the lower realm, but he didn't see any of them in the outland. They were all selfish and indifferent. He had a good impression of the disciples of the 8 Baron sect. Such loyal people were indeed worth helping, but he didn't rush to make a move. He was now in the form of a soul. Once he was discovered, it would be very dangerous. Even if he had the 9 tripod cauldron suppression, he didn't understand this world. He didn't know if there was an existence that could restrain the 9 tripod cauldron suppression, or if there was a secret skill that specifically targeted souls. He had to be careful. In a small courtyard at the center of the fight between the two groups, a tall, burly, and dignified middle-aged man sat in the middle of the courtyard. He quietly admired the moonlight and turned a deaf ear to the sounds of fighting outside. From time to time, he raised his jade cup and toasted under the bright moonlight. Then, he finished the cup in one gulp. His figure seemed a little lonely. Suddenly, a protector in purple landed in the courtyard. He gave a fist salute and said, "Governor, let's retreat for now. The mad dogs of the 8 Baron sect have really gone crazy this time." "I won't leave." Tang Yuan put down his jade cup and said calmly, "If they can attack, then let them. This is my territory. How can the small 8 Baron sect be so presumptuous? Sigh, Governor, let's avoid them for now. It's not good to fight them. They're all prepared to die. Why do we have to lower ourselves to their level?" The protector in purple was an old man with white eyebrows and beard. He advised earnestly, "Wait until they lose their spirit. Then we'll get rid of them. It'll save us effort." "Elder Song, I won't retreat," Tang Yuan said calmly. "I want to see if they have the ability to kill me." "Governor," the old man in purple wanted to persuade him again, but Tang Yuan raised his hand and interrupted him. A chuckle suddenly echoed throughout the governor's residence and even the entire Luo Xia city. Tang Yuan's expression changed slightly. "What a tough Tang Yuan." The clear laughter continued. Tang Yuan from the 7 Seas sect lives up to his reputation. Chapter 2465. Ba Huang Sect Song Zhanqing. A clear laughter rang out. "Song Zhanqing." Tang Yuan's face suddenly darkened. His jade-like face suddenly turned black iron. He gritted his teeth and said coldly, "You really think highly of me." Song Zhanqing was one of the 9 most powerful masters among the younger generation. You can only blame your poor eyesight. Song Qinqing's voice rang out in the air. "You dared to kill a disciple of our 8 desolate sect and the grandson of one of our elders. You really deserve it." No wonder. Tang Yuan's face darkened even more. His heart sank. The status of the Ba Huang sect's elder was very high. With the death of the Ba Huang sect's elder's grandson, no matter how powerful he was, even if he was lucky enough to last until the end, he would be facing the Ba Huang sect's elder. He would definitely die. At this moment, he was filled with despair. Instead, he calmed down. Since he was going to die, he might as well go crazy and drag more Ba Huang sect disciples to their deaths. At least they would have company on the road to hell. Chu Li's omniscient mirror was still observing the situation. He saw Song Zhanqing standing in the void. He was clearly standing there, but he had disappeared. It was as if he had an invisible talisman and had completely blended into the void. Song Zhanqing was tall and burly. He was handsome, with sharp eyebrows and an imposing aura. When he spoke, Song Zhanqing was swimming in the void like a fish swimming in water. His voice was clear and precise. It was not erratic, but it was everywhere. Chu Li could not pinpoint his location through his voice. Chu Li watched Song Zhanqing move around the void with ease. His movements were gentle and elegant. Suddenly, he had a flash of insight, and his heavenly demonic aerial manipulation technique had improved. He could not help but be overjoyed. Song Zhanqing's clear voice rang out again. "Commander Tang, do you want to drag a few of your disciples down with you? Or do you want to help them by sacrificing yourself to ensure their safety?" "Song Zhanqing, don't try to sow discord," Tang Yuan said coldly. "It is my duty to kill those who break the law. Your Ba Huang sect's elder's grandson is acting recklessly and should be punished." You should say that to the elder." Song Zhanqing laughed heartily. "Looks like you want to drag your sect down with you. Very well, I shall grant your wish." He suddenly appeared behind Tang Yuan and slashed with his palm. Tang Yuan pushed out with both palms. "Who?" It was as if a huge wave had surged up, surging violently, forming a sea of spiritual energy in the surroundings. The flowers, grasses, and everything else were swept up into the sky, rolling and crashing towards Song Qinqing. The momentum was world-shaking. Song Qianqing's palm slashed down, splitting the spiritual qi si into two. Anything that stood in front of this palm turned into dust and flew to the two sides. His palm slashed out a saber aura, splitting the sea of spirit qi and striking at Tang Yuan. Pump! Tang Yuan flew out and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Bang, 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 bang. He crashed through 3 walls in one breath and finally landed on the street. Song Qianqing appeared behind him and lightly struck out with his palm. Tang Yuan collapsed to the ground like a pile of mud. Song Qianqing shook his head and sighed. Castellan Tang, you brought this upon yourself. These 7 Seas sect's disciples are your accomplices. They can only die together to appease Elder Sun's anger. Tang Yuan glared at him angrily, but could not say a word. Song Qianqing disappeared in a flash, and the next moment, a sharp saber aura slashed at the Castellan's residence's protectors. One by one, the protectors flew out and fell to the ground, motionless dead. Chu Li's omniscient mirror saw that the Tanhua Divine Church's disciple, Su Jingyi, was also among them. She was hit by the palm blade, but the moment she was hit, she used Tanhua's dream, turning it into a void to negate the saber aura. Then, she pretended to be hit by the saber and flew out, spitting out a mouthful of blood before falling to the ground motionless and fainting. Chu Li exclaimed. Su Jingyi's Tanhua's dream was indeed of a higher level than food sideways. Song Qianqing's saber aura was shockingly powerful. Not only was it a pure saber energy condensed from spiritual energy, but it was also mixed with a trace of void energy, disregarding the distance between them. It was also mixed with spiritual energy, so if it was Fu Kai Wei, she would not be able to negate this attack. Song Qianqing slashed out 30 times with each slash, then glanced at the 8 Baron sect's disciples who were panting heavily, and nodded. Your courage in this operation is commendable. On behalf of Elder Sun, I will record this merit for each of you, once for the 7 transformation technique. Everyone was overjoyed and gave a fist salute. Thank you, Senior Brother Song. The technique was divided into 9 transformations, and every 9 transformations would increase by 1 level. 9 transformations of the 9 transformation technique would lead to 1 transformation of the 8 transformation technique, and 9 transformations would lead to the 7 transformation technique, and 1 transformation of the 7 transformation technique was no different from participating in a sect-protecting war. Song Qianqing waved his hand, and in a flash he appeared in front of a heavily injured 8 Baron sect's disciple and patted him lightly. There was a large hole in the 8 Baron sect's disciple's chest, which had been formed after he had been stabbed by a sword and twisted twice. Blood flowed out like a pillar, and his face was as pale as paper. His blood was almost completely drained, and his life was in danger. Although he had taken spirit medicine, he was still on the verge of death, and his vitality was weak. Song Qianqing's palm landed on the disciple's chest, and the large hole in his chest immediately began to wriggle. Then it began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a few breaths of time, it had completely healed, and there was only a small mark left to show that he had been injured. Thank you, Senior Brother Song. The 8 Baron sect disciple clasped his fist with difficulty. Song Qianqing said, It's rare for you to be so sincere. I will report this to the sect leader. Yes. Everyone became even more excited. Remembering the 7 transformation technique made them happy, and being promoted to the sect leader made them even more excited. This meant that they would receive another merit, and they might even be remembered by the sect leader. The sect leader had a photographic memory, so he could remember anything that was mentioned once. From then on, they would be considered people that the sect leader would look up to. Once there was a chance for them to be promoted, the sect leader would definitely remember them. Song Qianqing waved his hand, go. Everyone immediately disappeared into the night. Song Qianqing picked up Tang Yuan, glanced at his surroundings, and then leaped into the void, as if he had jumped into a deep pool and disappeared without a trace. Chu Li could not even track him, as he had completely disappeared from the observation range of his omniscient mirror. The protectors of the governor's residence did not move at all. Most of them were dead. Song Jianqing's seemingly light blade was enough to take their lives, and the only survivor was Su Jingyi. Her body silently turned invisible, and like a shadow, she slowly dissipated and completely disappeared. Chu Li hurriedly followed behind, watching as she shuttled through the governor's residence like a shadow. She did not make a sound and did not alert anyone. Other than the protectors, there were also a few odd job workers and Tang Yuan's family members in the governor's residence. When they heard the battle cries outside, they all hid in their rooms and did not dare to come out. Even if it was completely quiet, they did not dare to come out. Su Jingyi silently passed through the rooms and then landed in a simple and dilapidated courtyard. She entered the room and found a thin booklet on the bookshelf. After opening it, as if she had found a treasure, she hurriedly stuffed it into her arms and once again turned into a shadow. Chu Li had already observed the contents of this booklet. It was a book of strange objects, and on it were some legends about some rare objects. Looking at the yellowish color of the booklet and the strange material it was made of, it was obviously an ancient object. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.